Jeffrey Larson, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, it's good to see you, Jeff.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Hey, do me a favor and slide over a little bit so we can actually see your face. It's probably reversed.
Yeah, I think it is reversed.
Yeah. It's a little awkward. Nope, the other way.
The other way.
There we go.
There we go.
Look, you look good, man. Looking good. Yeah, it's great to have you. We finally got together.
Yeah, no, I know it took a little bit, but I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, I actually am sick today, so I almost had to cancel again. Then I remembered I canceled on you was that like a month ago? But I'm like, no, I'm doing this thing. I got a sexier voice now anyway when I'm sick, so it actually works. It works in my favor. Got a little bit deeper, a little bit more, I don't know, manly or something.
We'll go with that.
Anyway, it's great to have you. So, first of all, we met at the Portrait Society for the first time, which was awesome. And you'd never even done anything with the Portrait Society at all. And then you came in last year and just cleaned up, just like a rock star. You just walk in, walk out with the Draper Prize. You're like, mic drop.
It'll be efficient. Beginner's luck, I think, is what played a part.
Dude, it was amazing. Well, that painting that you had was amazing. And I've talked about it on several podcasts because your name comes up all the time on the podcast. And I tell everyone how resentful I am that I lost to you. But the better man won. Your painting was smoking. It was a smoking painting.
That's nice of you to say. I mean, I was as surprised as anybody, I think, when I was last man standing, because there was a lot of really good work there, obviously. And I did have my money on you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. There is a lot of good work. But every year, and I'm not just saying this because you're my guest. I'm saying this because I mean it. But there hasn't, I hesitate. No, okay. Many years, not all years, but many years, I get it totally wrong. I'm just, and I'll talk to my peers, other artists, and we all have our favorite, the one way, and usually we all agree on which one's going to win. And we're, I'd say about 3/4 of the time wrong. This time we were right. Me and a few of the people we were talking about it, I honestly I bet on you on that one. I thought you were going to win it. So that was kind of cool. So it was, who were the judges? I can't remember now.
That was going to be my question to you, because again, this was my first Portrait Society. So everything was new to me and I wasn't really quite sure how everything worked. And you're the veteran.
Yeah, it was Michael Shane Neal, I think, Don Whitelaw, and then the Coleman, what's his last name? He's a sculptor painter. He does Native American stuff.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
He is phenomenal, and I feel terrible. I can't remember his name now, but he did this insane demo. Did you see that demo that he did?
Well, somehow I missed that. And
same here. But I heard about it, like where he sculpted a little girl or something, and then turned it into an old lady, and then like a Native American Indian or something.
Yes.
Yeah, he's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, he's one that I mentioned to you that, back in the day, the only time you ever found any new artists or saw their work was if they were in a magazine, pre-internet. And I remember when you would pop up, and I had a folder on you.
No way. Awesome.
Yeah. And I think what it was is that you really thought out of the box. You painted really well and you thought out of the box. And that always really caught my eye, and I always admired that.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you because you're truly a master painter. So thanks, man. Well, so I want to know more about you. This is a fun thing about the podcast. I get to dig a little bit deeper. So tell me, and I have to tell you, I feel terrible, but you sent me that thing last night and I ended up having to do some stuff at home and I never got to read it. But I want to know, you had sent me a book that you had read or written, right? I want to know about that too. So let's talk about that down the road. But for starters, I kind of want to know where you came from, like how you ended up getting into art. And the reason I preface it by saying I want to know about your book, because I did read like the first paragraph or two before my wife asked for my help with something. And I think the first heading the first title or what do you call that? Heading? Did I get that right the first time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was something like you want to be an artist? Are you crazy or something like that? What was it you said?
It was, what the hell are you thinking is probably,
Yeah,
I
what
think,
the hell are you thinking?
yeah.
So I'm really anxious to know what the hell you were thinking because you're an artist. Like, so tell me about your past. How did you end up becoming an artist?
Yeah, I literally just kind of fell into it in the most fortunate way. Probably like you and everybody else listening, kind of the class artist, always did it for fun, never really took it that seriously. Um, as far as a future, just enjoyed it. And I remember I mean, I'm looking back, it's kind of funny because I remember being 10, 11, 12, in the local library pouring through Michelangelo books. And to me, I thought, well, every kid's going to do that, right? If you had asked. But
Yeah.
anyway, uh, senior year of high school, took all the art classes I could because I enjoyed it. Um, most of the football team took pottery. We did that, and I was the only one who failed. I couldn't throw a pot, and
Really?
yeah, I just couldn't do it. And the teacher said, anybody who comes with me to an extracurricular after school tour of the Institute of Arts, you get a guaranteed C. So I was like, yeah, sign me up. That's that's good. So I went. That's the first time I actually saw a real painting. I snuck away from the pottery because I could care less. But I'm wandering these halls seeing artwork for the first time, and I ran into a gentleman, a young guy doing a copy of a Boogerel, and just fascinating. Watched him for a long time. We chatted. Told me about this school he went to. I couldn't pronounce it anyway, and it was neat. But I went back, and my mom, who's an amateur painter, she would take over our living room in the winter and just paint away. I was like, Mom, why didn't we've never gone? Let's go to the institute. You got to see this. So it was weeks later. We went over finally to check it out. And this guy was there on his last day doing the copy, and he remembered me. And he was like, "Hey, listen, if you like art this much, you got to check out this school." He wrote it down. It was the Atelier Lac in Minneapolis. He said, "Just go check it out." So I called Richard Lack up, and he said, "Yeah, come on down, bring some stuff." Went and saw it. And it was really just for giggles. I was already signed up for college somewhere. I can't remember. To go into something I don't even remember either. But
You don't remember what you were going to study?
I vaguely, I liked science, I liked art. I
Okay.
didn't know what I would need. And so real no strong goals. I didn't know what I was going to do. But anyway, going through the atelier, it was like walking back into the 19th century. It was, these serious young people working on beautiful paintings and figure work. Chatted with Lack, showed him my work. We had several
Was this
other
Atelier? What was it called? Atelier Lac? What was it called?
atelier Lack, yeah.
Was
Richard
it
Lack
near your home where you grew up?
was in Minneapolis of all places.
So you
So
just
yeah,
it literally fell in your lap.
literally, no, absolutely. I mean, he studied with Ives Gamble. Gamble studied with Paxton. Paxton studied with Ray Rome, and you got that whole, you know, itinerary going back.
Right.
But he was from Minneapolis, so he moved back and formed his own little atelier. And at the time, I think that was in '68 when he founded it. But I
Man, he
know
was way
when
ahead
I
of the
was
curve.
there, yeah, when I was there, again, pre-internet, we knew of about 7, 8 schools in the world. There was Repins Academy. There was nothing going on in Florence yet. In fact, I remember meeting Graves in Minneapolis. He was just finishing up, kind of doing part-time study. Um, if I remember that right. So anyway, there wasn't a lot going on. And
What year would
yeah,
this have been?
but this was in 1980, 79. I
1980?
met him. And so anyway, we had some phone calls and he invited me to his home, his studio. And
Yeah.
again, I just went, this was fun, this was interesting, but I walked into his studio and it was, that was it. It just hit me. It's like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And
Wow.
so there was no rational decision. And I just went from him trying to kind of not talk me into it, but making me think about what I want to do with my future and consider that this is actually a possibility. Um, to me, okay, I want to apply. And he just reversed it on me. He's like, yeah, I don't even think I want you to apply. And it's like, well, what do I got to do here? Do I need to do X, Y? He says, no, I don't, you don't want to be an artist. And he started
Oh, so
arguing
he
with me.
pulled the same thing on you that you wrote in your book. What the hell were you
Yeah,
thinking?
yeah, that's where that came from, is that was,
Oh,
yeah. So anyway, Uh,
What was
late,
his why is it because he was kind of living hand to mouth his whole life or what? What was the reasoning?
no, no, no. It was nothing to do with that. It was more so that so here's what happened then. So he said, I tell you what, if you want to apply, maybe you got to take some night classes, um, and we'll just think about it. Well, this was in December. He didn't tell me till June that I was accepted. So I would every 2, 3 weeks bring him the work I'd been working on. I'd evenings, weekends, I'd paint, I'd draw. I figured I just finally wore him down, where he finally said, "Okay, you're in."
Really?
But I got to the school in the fall, and Steve Jertson was the assistant teacher. He was in charge of the first and second year students. So I met him, and we're chatting. I'm like telling the story, and I'm like, um, I don't get it. It just took forever. And he started laughing. He was just, actually, the first time you went to his studio, he called me up. So we got a new student. I'm
No
like,
way. He just strung you along for 6 months?
yeah, well, that's what I said. You mean what was that about? And he says, and Steve got serious. He said, if you hadn't fought to get in, you probably wouldn't fight once you get out. So he just wanted to see if I had grit.
Get
He
out of
had two
town.
openings, I think, and 30 people applying. So maybe he was doing that with a lot of people. I don't know. But for whatever reason, I got in. So that
You know what?
was,
That's so cool. That's cool on a lot of levels. But on one level is he was teaching for the right reason.
oh yeah.
You know what I
He
mean?
didn't
Because he didn't see
yeah.
dollar signs when you walked in. He saw potential and he did what was best for you, not what was best for him. What was best for him was to sign you up right away and to start collecting a paycheck.
No, he could have, that school could have had 50, 80 people. There was always 20, 30, 40 people applying every year with 3 openings.
Good for
So,
him, man.
and
That's
then he
amazing.
also had his tuition. I think the first year was $1,500. It was
For the
the
whole
cheap
year?
for the whole year. And it was just, he had a
Man,
thriving
that's a different
school and that funded
that's
it.
cheap. It's the 80,
Yeah,
it's
but
80 though, but
we were all starving young artists and we could
yeah.
barely, yeah.
But it is 1982. I mean, I don't know what that is today, but
Yeah, I figured it's about 7, 8,000 bucks,
yeah.
maybe 10, but
Man, oh man. Is he still around?
no, he passed away. I should know this, about 10, 15 years ago.
Okay. Did you keep in touch with him after leaving or?
When I graduated, I worked in his studio for off and on a couple of years, working on underpaintings. Yeah, he was a real Renaissance painter. So trained under Gamble as an American Impressionist. Loved Rubens as his favorite artist. His real passion was imaginative paintings. So he
Mm-hmm.
spent his whole life studying different techniques, from Grisaille to Bister to, whatever else. And so he would do portraits and still lifes and everything else. And when he got far enough ahead, then he would take 6 months off and create some imaginative pieces, which I don't think he hardly sold any of those. They're very personal, very
Hmm.
Jungian. Um, and but that's what he kind of lived for.
Hmm. So when you were there studying, obviously you're learning a lot about technique, how to draw and paint. But what were you thinking as far as your future? I mean, what did you anticipate happening when you left? And
I
then
was
what did
18.
happen?
I was 18. I didn't
You
think
didn't
beyond
think
the
about
weekend.
it.
I did. When I look back, it was just insanely naive. It was just completely, it just followed my gut. It literally was, I had to do this. It
Yeah.
never even, my father was an engineer. There was no artists in our family that, really in the arts. So I had him as a rational foil. Are you sure about this? And obviously questioning my decision. It just, I never looked left or right. I don't know why. I look back now and that seems strange, but
Did you pay for it yourself or did your parents at least help you there?
I actually contributed the first year part of it, and then it was up to me the rest of it.
Hmm.
And when you said we were learning a lot of technique, and the thing that Lack did more than anything is he teach you how to see,
Yeah.
train you how to, and the painting was secondary in a way, but
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense. I mean, I imagine that's what you teach as well.
yeah.
More like how to see. Yeah. It's funny because it's funny you should make that distinction because literally the moment that came out of my mouth, I thought, well, that's not what I would teach. That's probably not what he taught his technique. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Principles is probably more what he taught than anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the whole thing of seeing, um, my take on it is that, we're all born seeing purely pixels, like Degas said, or Monet, you have to see like a child. And I think what he meant is you just want to see innocently with no connotations as to what you're looking at. And as
yeah.
we very quickly, we learn to associate these color splotches with this is mom, this is hard, this is soft, this is, whatever else. And you basically filter out what 80-90% of all the visual stimuli hitting your eyes, and you then retain, your brain works with what's needed, which is primarily for navigation, and
Right.
I look across the floor. If I was going to walk across the floor, I wouldn't really look at the floor. I'd glance, floor, chair over there. I can go sit down over there. It's 20 feet, everything else I'm filtering out.
Right.
And so when you get, as you know, as when you become an art student, you can't generalize like this. It's the same as basically you're characterizing. So what I think we all run into is we'll look at whatever item we're going to paint or draw, and we think we know what it looks like. And what we're really seeing is just a caricature, shorthand, based on how we just kind of average it out. That's what a chair is supposed to look like. Face, that's a face. What does that mean? And it's not anymore just arrangements of lights and darks and color. So
Mm-hmm.
similar to how if you're at this, if you're at the state fair and some guy does a great caricature, ears are too big, the nose is massive, like that looks like Joe. That's perfect. They nailed him, but it's not accurate. We do that in a subtle way all the time. And so when we say learn how to see, it's learning to turn that part of your brain off and filter it back to really, I think the only thing that can go on canvas, which, it's a two-dimensional surface. You got limited means, pigments, pencil, whatever. You've got shapes, you got values. The values have a hue, a color, and intensity. They create a puzzle piece and they nestle up against other puzzle pieces.
Mm.
And that's it, edges. So no matter what the painting is, how loose, how refined, flat, shows great depth or distance, it's still an arrangement of puzzle pieces. So the way our tradition is if you can train your eye to only see and extract that information, what shape is it, what value is it, what hue is it, and where does it go next to the other puzzle
Mm-hmm.
pieces, and in what relationship within the limitations of your paint, you can paint anything you see.
Yeah, man, I bet you're a good teacher. That was well said.
Well,
Yeah. And I want to know about that too. You've got this crazy church that I'm excited about, knowing more about. I'm so jealous of that church. It looks amazing. But I wanted to add something to what you were saying. I'm with you 100%. Of course, we're going to agree on this stuff. It's the truth. There's nothing to debate, right? But there's one thing that I would add to that is you had said earlier that you filter things out. We tend to filter things out. We look at the floor, we just get a rough estimate what a floor looks like, and so on and so forth. But I would say we also add things. We're looking into the shadows and we're seeing way more detail than we should be because our eyes open up, they dilate, we see more, then we look into the lights and our eyes, shrink up again, and then what's the opposite of dilate?
contract. So I
Contract, I
call it,
guess.
it's like aperture setting. That's what I tell the students. You
Yeah,
got
it's
to,
like you have an aperture, but you have to turn that aperture off and do like fix it, right?
yeah,
Just fix it
yeah,
to one setting. And I often call that turning on your lizard brain, where you're not thinking, you're just really seeing and not thinking. So yeah, with you 100%.
no, I
Um,
agree. No, but
so
on the other side, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
On the other side, then there's the whole form school, like Jacob School and a number
Yeah.
of others, where they come at it purely almost through conceptualization, in the sense that they really want to understand what's happening on the surface and the form, while we're trying to ignore it. And actually our school, like in our tradition, like with training with LAC, we had none of that. In fact, his idea of form was that once you get your values and edges right, then it'll pop on the
It'll just
canvas.
happen.
Then you're right.
Right.
Well, if you see that, how do you get it right? And that's the problem that you spend 20 years trying to figure out when you're lost in the woods. How do
Yeah.
you how do you find your mistakes? And so we've added a whole form year onto curriculum, or half a year really, where people then do learn to turn on that part of their brain and think through what they're doing. So if they can't see their mistakes, they can think them through and maybe find them that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, we are totally on the same page. I've done the same thing with my curriculum here. And I just had Michael Klein on, who studied at Grand Central. The guy's brilliant. And I had asked him about something he had said to me like 14 years ago. He had come to my studio something like 14 years ago, and I had asked him about Grand Central Academy, and he was looking at the way I was painting, and he made some comment about the way that he was taught, which was what you just described, which was more about looking at the thing, trying to understand what the light is actually doing, and then re-engineering that onto his drawing, right? And he kind of equated that to, or maybe it was me restating what he had said, or trying to understand what he had said. But either way, between the two of us, we had made this comparison with anatomy. It's like, if you know anatomy just enough that you sort of recognize the bumps, technically, you may not even need it. If you see well enough, you'll put all the bumps in the right place. But by knowing anatomy even just a little bit, you're less likely to put the bump a little too low or a little too high, because it's sort of an added resource. It just, like you'd said, it's helping you to avoid not seeing well enough.
Yeah.
Right. And so he said he's back to kind of more of a optical painting, which is what you and I do more, I think. But yeah, it is. It's like you have to see so well to not miss this stuff. So understanding form and anatomy and other things, it's just sort of like a backup plan, it seems like.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I agree with you about Michael. He's a brilliant painter, and he's optical, but his innate understanding too of form and his approach is such a nice blend that
Oh yeah.
that Michael, I guess. I mean, who paints flowers like him, especially along with everything else, but flowers are so difficult. But the thing then on the switch side is, if you fall too much into considering the generic knowledge of, say, anatomy or perspective, whatever, pretty soon you're drawing Hercules and your model is nothing like that.
Right.
Like what you said, you impose that information. So, striking that balance, which I think most artists, they're somewhere, they're grabbing from either side and taking what they need and so on. But it's two schools of thought as far as training.
Yeah. Yeah. I think combining them is the way to go, like you're doing. So tell me about that.
I was going to say too, with Michael, he came and did a workshop. I mean, we go way back, and I think it was a day and a half before we realized that when he was talking about form and I was talking about form, we were talking about two different things and values tied to form.
Oh, wait a minute. So explain that. Is it?
Yeah, actually, it's more values. So when he was talking values, it was a manipulation of the value structure that explained the form, not necessarily tied to the value you see. It's just the relational structure of it.
So you're thinking, when you look at value, you're thinking that's 60% gray, 60% gray.
Yeah.
And when he's thinking value, he's thinking as it turns away from the form, it gets lighter.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty subtle distinction though, because technically it's still 60% gray. And as it gets lighter, it might move into, you'd say your reflected light is 60% gray. You should land in the same place.
Depends like you said before, though, I think isn't what you're keen on. If I want to bring out the pop of light on something, I'm going to make sure that I got my darks as dark as they can go to increase as much value range as I've got to the highlight, or work from the highlight
fair
down.
Enough. Right.
Everything will get buried. Or do I want the flood of light? And so maybe I'm going to ease back on the middle tones. It's what that aperture setting is, like you mentioned before.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, we could geek out on this for 2 hours. So when did you start? Well, let me go back to when you left LAC. You worked with him for a couple years. And
I was there for 4, and then I went from there and helped open kind of a branch school. Former students had been taking private students, and then she was ready to open up a brick and mortar, if you want to say it that way. And so she brought me on as the head instructor and assistant director or something. And so I did that for 3 years. Yeah, I think 3 years before I decided I just really wanted to paint full time.
Okay. So was that a big leap for you at the time? Was that a scary thing to do?
No, it was a wonderful transition because you asked me what were your plans after you graduate? I had none. So the day I graduated, it was kind of like, now what? And
Yeah.
actually, we've been talking. So I knew
No, no, no.
that
I mean, when you left her and when you became a full-time artist, that point.
that was just go for it. I had
Really?
no I had no plan, no clue what I was going to do. I just started painting.
Really? And so tell me a little bit about how that worked out. I mean, what's the story? What happened? I mean, your first painting sale, your first gallery.
Yeah, nothing too impressive. I was fortunate where, as a student, I had, I guess you could call them patrons almost, people that would buy most of the work I did and so on. So I did a lot of portrait commissions, started out with pencils, then charcoals, and eventually color as a student even. So I had a bit of a building blocks of what I understood how this could work.
Right.
I was teaching evening classes, and then again I went and taught. But after 3 years when I left, I met Heidi, my wife, at the school. We got married, and she was painting, and it was really through her that we got our break. So she was from way northern Minnesota, came down to go to our school, and just basically answered an ad in the paper, someone looking for a housekeeper, nanny, whatever, live-in person near the school. So she answered the ad, and it ended up being the most wonderful family, but you'd consider them old money, very, very well off. And so after we were married and then they became more friends, we approached them really nervously about, would you ever host a show for us? And they did. They opened up their house and they catered it. And their friends were well, people in the same realm as them. And
Hmm.
so we had an amazing opening in their beautiful mansion on the lake.
Wow.
And it was kind of funny because, like I said, they catered it. It was the perfect show. Everybody was really nice. We had wonderful compliments. Everybody left, and we started looking, and we hadn't sold a thing.
Oh,
Everybody was
no.
having fun. So she's like, "This isn't going to work." She said, "We're going out of town for a week. You guys just stay here." Here, she gave me her personal address book, and she said, "I'll just mark through the people that were here. Here's the people that should have been here. You just start calling them."
No way.
Yeah, and so
And you
I just
did it?
what else could I do? We had invested every penny we had, plus I borrowed $500 from my dad for to
Whoa,
help
wait,
us.
wait. Oh, how old were you at this point?
Let's see, I was 25. Yeah, I must have been 25, 26.
So you got on the phone with all these wealthy people and just tried to sell them a painting over the phone.
I had no other choice. And here it got kind of funny because uh yeah, I had this list, I wrote all down, and so I'd called and no one picked up. So I'd put a check, and then I'd called and left a message. I'd put another mark. Well, pretty soon by the end of 2, 3 days, I couldn't read any of my notes hardly. One lady I'm talking to, and she says, "Okay, this is the seventh time you've called me. If I promise to come and look at your show again, will you leave me alone?"
No, she didn't.
She came and bought 3 paintings.
Are you freaking kidding me?
So by the end of the week, I think we had sold 30 pieces,
No
and
way. Oh my gosh.
we
This
were
is
good for
such a
the
great
year.
lesson for aspiring artists to be,
Well,
man, talk about the grit.
in
Richard Black saw
desperation, put
something
all
in
your
you.
eggs in one basket. What are you going to do? So anyway, that worked out.
Wow. That's such a cool story. So, how many paintings did you end up selling total after all the phone calls?
I think about 30. I think we had maybe 50 paintings and we sold over half the show. Got some clients where there's some portrait commissions and things like that. Then they hosted a second show for us the next year. And then
How'd that one do before the phone
that
calls?
did better. That did better because people knew what to expect and
Really?
what they were coming for. And so that one went well. And so
So let
then
me back up a little bit. Did any of the phone calls burn any bridges?
I'm sure there's quite a few people out here probably really irritated.
But you
And
don't know for you don't know
it
for
was like
sure.
the president of Pillsbury. It was the president of, you know, Cargill. It was
Do you remember more or less what you would say on the phone?
uh, just I listen. If they'd been there, I just want to say it was really nice to meet you. I just thought maybe you'd like to come back and take another peek at everything. Just I don't know what I said. Probably
Whoa,
probably pretty foolish.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's inspiring. Way to
Some
go.
came, some came back. So
And that's really cool of your client too, because some clients are really protective. They don't, it's almost like, you get this friend who's got, multi-level marketing. He's like gung ho about multi-level marketing and and you never want to tell that person, any of your friends, who they are, because you don't want your friends to be pissed at you.
yeah,
And you would think that this wealthy person might feel that way about an artist. Like, oh, I don't want my friends to be like, why'd you give that artist my phone number?
it was amazing. That's what I said. They were
Yeah,
just phenomenal people. So
really.
generous to open up their mansion basically and to say, "We're leaving. Here you go. Here's the keys. Here's the phone. Good luck."
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really something.
So the next show went well. And then did you just continue to do shows yearly or what? I mean, what's your career looked
Yes.
like?
Yeah, so at that point we would make enough to kind of have live for a year. Now live really, really cheaply, really
Yeah.
right on a shoestring. But we could stretch it out. The next year, my folks then opened up their doors, and we had just a small little rambler in suburbia. So then we we invited, all our rich clientele to this little house, and that was fun. And that went fine. And then I consulted with another opening of a school in the Twin Cities, the Minnesota River School. That's the one that Michael went to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they had the resources to build a phenomenal facilities. They had their own gallery in the school. So then they hosted the next one. And then at that point, there was a gallery I approached, and that was at the time one of the better galleries. It wasn't a great gallery, but in the Twin Cities, it was in the right location.
Mm-hmm.
And negotiated a deal because I showed him my clientele list, and I said, this is what I'd like. I want a catalog. I want the show. I want to be in charge of hanging it. I basically laid out a list of demands, and yeah, let's do it. And so for the next maybe 10 years, every year, maybe every 2 years, we'd have a big one-man show. And it just grew.
Wow.
And after that, then he retired. And this gallery it's in the Galleria, which is the really nice mall in the Twin Cities and whatever. And um, so when he closed his doors, I was kind of out. But the owner of the Galleria, who'd become a client, reached out to us, and evidently the restaurants had been bugging him. They said, and during the shows, I mean, there's a lot of people coming in, and we'd like to get them back. So he would call me up and whenever a storefront would open up, he'd say, "Okay, Jeff, we got, Restoration Hardware is just closing. Yeah, we got next October, November before the new people come in. Do you want it?" And yeah, sure, perfect. And so then we'd get it for a month, and we'd build out an entire gallery. I had staff at this time that I could just get on the phone and hire. We did all the marketing. We'd have the catalogs made. I had caterers in place. We did cases of wine. Basically just do a pop-up gallery every year or two.
This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary Brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting.
And
Man.
and that worked until he sold it probably 12 years ago, and that's the last show I've had actually. They sold to a big multinational corporation, and they're not as easy to chat with.
Yeah. So 12 years ago. So you were what, like 60 now? Well, how old are you?
Yeah.
60 what?
62.
62. So you were 50. You're my age when you had your last show.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing now? If you're not having shows, you just selling to clientele one painting at a time?
Pretty much. I've somehow fell into a situation where I'm doing a lot of commission work.
Mm-hmm.
And contractually, I can't talk about it, but
You
it's been
can't? Oh, that makes me
no,
really
I
curious.
don't even understand why that is, to be honest. But I got to honor that. But he every year there's quite a few paintings he commissions from me, all different themes and different things. He
Can
does that
you
with
do you
several.
even show this work?
Occasionally, as long as I don't attribute it to where it ended up, I can do that. But some of it's so specific that um, I wouldn't even. It's not really like my work as much, historical or whatever. Some of it I do.
Oh my gosh, you're killing me, man. You're killing me with this curiosity.
Yeah. And also at that time too, I worked, I was kind of becoming, in my mind, a bigger fish in a small pond in the Twin Cities. And so I started working with Trees Place and Arcadia and oh, who else? Several other galleries just to kind of, that was the only way you could get in the magazines,
Yeah.
was by your own ad. So I would do that on the alternate years. I'd have a show with them type of thing, or group shows or whatever.
Does anyone look at magazines anymore? Do you look
I
at
don't
magazines anymore?
know.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I looked at a magazine.
Yeah.
It's I don't know how I feel about it. Well, I do know how I feel about it. I hate social media with a passion. So I kind of wish they were back, magazines. But at the same time, I look at social media and I don't look at magazines. So I'm a total hypocrite.
Well, but
Uh,
then you always had to jump through, there was a lot of gatekeepers to get your name in a magazine, or you had to spend a lot of money. And at least, the plus side of social media, which I agree with you, and but it's the things we can do. I mean, you can do a painting, you can hit click, and someone over in Europe can see your work 10 seconds later. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
it is amazing, but you got to be a bit of a narcissist to really stay on top of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
just, and you're clearly not one of those because I'm looking at your Instagram right here on off to my left, and you're just posting your work, but you're not, standing there with a painting and turning around and doing all the Instagram, the things that Instagram wants you to do this week in order to sort
Yeah,
of tease the algorithm, you know,
yeah.
and that just stuff just drives me nuts. I'm like, I'm not doing this stuff. I'm not going to do it. I'm not.
Yep, no, I
But
agree.
and that's what's frustrating. Where in the magazine days, it was like you just paint well, and hopefully you'll
Mhm.
get noticed and put in magazines. Now it's you gotta go. Okay, what's the algorithm doing? What's it want to see today? Okay, I'm gonna put this particular song in the backdrop, and then I'm gonna have a detail of the eye of a particular painting. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah. So that's the
Yeah.
frustrating thing about social media for me. But you're not doing that stuff. You're not, but it shows, and don't take this the wrong way, but it shows because you're one of the best artists out there and your following is, it's okay. Like 34,000, right? Mine's
Okay.
mine's not great either. But and it's because you got to play the game to get in the hundreds and millions and whatever, hundreds of thousands of followers or
Well, how many of that converts to clients? I mean, I think it's a good
yeah.
thing to have this ability to post the work when you'd like to. I kind of feel like we're kind of just posting for each other, which has value. But
Yeah.
about you, I don't know that I've ever sold a painting off of Instagram.
Never, never.
So
But I do
anybody,
have a lot of guests who sell paintings off of Instagram.
okay, okay, good for them, I guess.
But here's the thing is I don't know of many guests that are in your price point. I would assume that your price point exceeds what Instagram will sell.
I'm not sure what that is. It's
I don't know what that is either. Although what's it oh, I'm drawing a blank now. Sean Lay, Australian artist.
yeah,
That dude's whole career is on Instagram and he sells high dollar paintings.
okay, good for him
I
though.
don't know. I don't know
Dennis
what the secret
Gorodinsky.
is. I don't know
Are
what
you
the secret
familiar
is.
with are you familiar with Dennis Gorodinsky?
No.
Probably one of the finest plein air landscape painters alive today. He's Ukrainian. You have to look him up.
I
He's
will. I will.
Yeah, he
Maybe
is.
I'll
I completely respect this guy's work. And there's good and bad, but his is mostly good. And you dig a little bit, but it's some crazy, crazy plein air work.
What's his name again?
Dennis Gorodinsky,
Oh yeah,
Deni.
yeah, 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 yeah. Wait,
Yeah,
yeah. I
and
think I
I
even
think he
own
just
one of
does
his
everything.
paintings.
Huh?
I think I might own one of his paintings.
Yeah, I do. I think he's very reasonable. And I've got one, and some of my students have some. But he just sells, I think he just posts one or two a week, and that's how he sells his work. So
Okay, How do you spell his first name? I put Dennis, and that's not coming up
Let me, I can find it here.
because I want to pull him up real quick. Oh, yep, there he is. It's
Okay.
Denny's, Denys.
Why? Okay, I'm sure. You sure that's it? Okay.
Well, maybe I'm wrong.
I'll find it here.
Yeah. Denny's. Yeah, no, that's him.
Yeah,
I
you're
don't know how
right.
you pronounce it, but it's Dey or Denys.
Gordon.
Um,
Yeah. But
yeah, his work is extraordinary.
yeah, he can work with intensities and capture sunlight, work with the limitations of his paint like nobody I know, and catch fleeting effects. And anyway, a lot of respect for his work.
Yeah, yeah. He's something else. Yeah, I see. Yeah, here's my conversations with him. Here's my
Yeah.
invite right here. But
Okay.
he doesn't speak great English, so I haven't
Right.
been able to get him on. But one of these days, I'd like to get him on. He's exceptional.
Yeah.
But and that's one of the questions I've actually been thinking about asking my guests is who I should interview. Because I know there's great artists out there I haven't heard of. So yeah. So if you think of anyone else, let me know.
Put some thought into that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's exceptional. But anyway, where were we before we talked about Denny's? This is about you, man. This this is supposed to be about you. Okay, so we talked about your career. Okay, we're at your career. Let's look at your I know what I want to ask you about. Your wife. You said your wife's a painter too. Would I know your wife's work?
No, no, we painted side by side and she was part of those first shows. And then when she got pregnant with our first son, the doctor said, well, stay away from the solvents and this and that. And she did. And then once Brock was born, something just switched in her. She just said, I like painting, but I love this being a mom. And so
Oh, good for her.
she more than anything, I mean, you know that you don't run a business by yourself like we do, so she's right there helping from the framing to the shows and keeping in contact with clients and this and that. And then we had 3 children and we homeschooled and traveled quite a bit with them. And so she had a full-time job. And so
How
now
old are your kids now?
33, 31, and 29. So now she's starting to get back into it. She's doing some book illustration stuff for herself. And but she helps run the school. We're doing the grandkid things now. She loves that. So, it's more about finding time.
Right, right. But she never regrets it. She feels good about having done the mom thing.
I've asked her that over the years. You sure? And she says, no, no. She likes painting. She does. She enjoys it, but she doesn't love it like she does the other things.
That's not that unusual. My wife was really into photography, and then once she had kids, it was like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. I
You
think
know?
that should be, I don't think our society honors that enough. I mean,
Yeah.
raising that next generation, that's something we should put some thought into and take some care. And
Well, and
so,
our kids, I always joke about this, but because I've said it too many times, but I always say that I've been working on a masterpiece for 22 years, 20. How long have I been painting? 24 years. But it only took me about 30 seconds to make each of my 3 kids.
exactly.
And they're the greatest work I ever made. It's
Yep.
like, my wife, that's her art, right? The way
Yep.
yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Not that painting isn't a good thing, but yeah, if that's,
Balancing the two, that's the hard
yeah,
thing.
yeah. So let's talk about your school. Cause again, I'm so freaking envious of that church. I want to pull up your Instagram. Your school seems really awesome.
It's a beautiful building.
How did
It's
you end up with this?
well, it's
It's
kind of
a,
fun.
yeah, here's a picture of it.
There's a painting we did of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's a painting of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's from our Rubens project. I'll have to maybe tell you a little bit about that.
Look at this church. You own this? You own
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah, it sat abandoned for about 5 years.
What kind of church was it?
An old Catholic church, It's got a great history because it's in Duluth, Minnesota, and Duluth for a time in the late 1800s was, I think it had more millionaires per capita than anywhere in the United States. And it
Really?
just, there was this coming together of the timber industry, the shipping industry through the Great Lakes and the iron ore that they were finding up in the Mesaba Range, which is right outside of Duluth. So consequently, there's an area of Duluth that's just beautiful mansions. It's just exceedingly wealthy. It was anyway. And to build these buildings, they brought in Sicilian stoneworkers. And so when they came to Duluth, they were really prejudiced against. They were at the time the dark-skinned people of Duluth. And so no other Catholic church would allow them to come in. So they bought the first church ever built in Duluth in the 1600s, I think, an old wooden structure falling apart. And I think they just had in their mind, we'll show them. So they were
Mm.
stonemasons building, all day long. Evenings and weekends, they'd go up just above our church location up into the hills and start chiseling rock. And in the winter, they'd slide it down. So they, on the side, built this church, and it's beautiful. It's a
And this thing is all made out of stone.
from the Masons themselves.
What kind of stone is it?
I'm not even sure. It's like they call it Minnesota bluestone. It's I don't know if that's the correct title. I don't really know what it is. It's very hard. It's
Oh, it
not
is
a,
hard.
but it's not a sandstone either. So it's the basalt, I suppose, that the iron ore is within.
Mm-hmm.
Probably some form of that.
And what's the square footage of this room right here?
It's probably about 3,000 square feet. It's roughly 80 by 40, I think. So that's our
Wow.
main studio. That's where the full-time students each take a window and
Don't
so
tell
on.
me these windows face north.
Yep.
No, my gosh. Are you
Yep.
kidding me?
Yep.
How could
Almost
you
clear
get
enough.
so
Not quite.
lucky?
So in the morning we get a little light coming in, but
What? Wait,
yeah.
so if that is north, then that is east.
South.
No, I thought these were
Not
north.
southeast. You're right. Correct. I should
Yeah.
know that.
So that's east.
We have that blocked off actually now. And
Okay.
then there's another floor below it. So we have,
There's another 3,000 square foot floor below it.
yeah.
And
So
how
when we
tall are the
got this,
ceilings down there?
those are 12-foot ceilings.
In the basement are 12-foot ceilings.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Oh
the
my
building
gosh,
we
man.
got they had cut the power, took out the heat and shut the doors, and it sat there for about 5 years. And I didn't realize it at the time, but there was quite a controversy about it. I think it's on the register as one of the top most endangered historic buildings of Minnesota at the time. And there was big battles in the newspaper, and I was oblivious to all of this. And I just happened, a buddy said, when I was looking for buildings to form a school, we should check out Old St. Pete's. It's like, where's that? It's on Goats Hill, it's called, up in Duluth. And Duluth is really steep. It's the San Francisco of the North, I like to call it, but it's on a really steep hill. And it's beautiful. And again, being the immigrants and the low men on the totem pole, they were up at the top of the hill. Because back then you had to walk up and down or take your horse or whatever it was. And so it's Goat Hill. And anyway, I went and checked it out, and it just, if I was to design the building, it would be, and build from scratch, it would have been 40 by 100, tall ceilings, facing north, 2 stories.
Yeah, you couldn't get much better than this if you
Yeah,
built it
basically
yourself.
it would be this without the stone. And but it
And
was
it,
in rough.
um,
It was moldy. It was icicles hanging down on the inside. It was pretty nasty.
moldy. So do you have to pay quite a bit to get that cleaned up?
I brought someone in, and he was going to charge a fortune, and then I saw he was basically using simple green, and I thought, okay, we can do that. And we had it tested, and it wasn't horrible. It was
Okay.
doable. And we ran into a lot of things like that. So it's I was doing my due diligence looking at this building. I was bringing in contractors and so on just to appraise it. I really didn't have that much money, to be honest, but they weren't asking that much for it. And actually it was I don't know what they were asking. You had to go to the church and try to buy it from them. And they had turned everybody down who had offered money for it. So we're not sure what they were thinking. But in the midst of it, I was heading there, and it was I we reached out to an old friend we hadn't seen for several years and just, how you doing? What's new? And she's asking us, well, what's new with you? And yeah, we're looking at this old church. We might build a school, buy a school. And she said, I love old churches. Can we go see it before we go out to dinner? Well, we're on our way there. She's going to meet us and get a phone call from another friend who's really involved in the city and knows what's going on and said, I heard you put a bid in. It's like, I didn't put a bid in. Well, I heard you put a bid in, and this time they're going to accept it no matter what. And this was a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock.
Why?
They were
Why?
accepted on Monday. And I'm like, well, that's it. We hadn't talked to a bank or anything yet. Oh, okay, well, that's it. So I call a friend. I say, well, listen, this ship's sailing, let's just go to dinner. So I love old churches. Can we see it? Okay.
Wait. I'm confused. What do you mean the ship's sailing? Did you put a bid in or
Well,
didn't
because
you?
I knew we couldn't talk to a bank Friday at 4 o'clock and get a loan
But they
approved by
said you
Monday.
already put a bid in. I'm confused.
No, someone else did. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
someone else had put a bid
Yeah, I
in.
said that wasn't me. And she said, well, somebody put a bid in
My bad.
and
Okay, I'm slow.
they're going to accept it on Monday. Well, as I'm walking through it, looking through this new lens of like, we're not going to get, I'm like, oh, am I relieved? This place is a lot of work. It's horrible. Our friend who's well off, she just stopped and said, you got to buy this. I'll back you. I'll be your bank. And we're like, no way.
Are you
I
serious?
would have been in Monday morning and got it. So, but we didn't know the real
So when you
condition.
say back you, do you mean you basically took a loan out from her?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So that worked out well. And then, but then we were still sitting then owning a building where, well, several things actually, now I think about it. So then I thought I better go to the city and the zoning and make sure this will work for a school. And they're looking through their books and they're like, what's the address? And it's like, 810 West 3rd Street. Okay. It can be anything business wise. And it literally said, except a school or some other obscure thing. I'm like, you're kidding me. And so
Did you
anyway,
already own it?
and I owned it. Yeah, I just wrote a really
Oh.
nice check. And but anyway, there was this thing, if I turned it into historical register, then I could bypass. Anyway, so there was a year of jumping through hoops for that. And then they'd told us the roof was a $250,000 repair job. That's what the contractor's telling me. So I was going to walk away at that point. Well, no, we owned
Oh
it.
man.
So my wife's uncle was a roofer and then worked his way up at the University of North Dakota. He was in charge of all the buildings, campus-wide. Said, Craig, you know about roofs. What should we do? He says, you know what? We haven't seen each other for a while. I'll come and visit you and I'll take a look. 4 days later and $600, the entire roof was patched. It was totally fine. They were lying to me. It was about a $250,000 repair job. So we
Dude,
had
that's messed
fell into
up.
place one after the other. That was quite amazing.
Wow. What about the inside? Besides scrubbing the mold away, what'd you have to do to the inside?
We gutted it back to the downstairs. We gutted it back to the stone, emptied everything out. It was, I think we did 38 dumpsters.
There's no retaining walls downstairs. It's just one big
I
open
had
room.
the engineers that I had to hire to come and look at it said this was cutting edge technology when it was built. So they had some of the first buildings in Duluth that had iron beams going across.
Oh my
Supporting
gosh.
stairs.
He scored so bad. All right. I'm not going to ask you, but when we get off, I want to know how much you paid for this, but I won't have you share it with the public. Maybe you won't tell me, but
Not as much as you'd think. I mean, it ended up, it was a bit, but it wasn't what we got out of it was quite amazing.
yeah, I own a building in Salt Lake and it's about 3,000 square feet and everything's in it. My studio, my shop, my school. I'm so grown out of it. Like I absolutely have to, well, I don't have to, but it really would be nice to upgrade. That's why I'm like 6,000 square feet. That's just amazing.
You know what, go for 9 because we're kind of outgrowing this. I think you grow to fit whatever size building you have.
Seriously. I know. Right. Yeah. You're outgrown. How many students do you take?
We would be full at 16. This year we have 10. COVID knocked out, we had a couple of real slow years with COVID.
Yeah.
So now we're getting a lot of people applying and we actually took more than we usually do this year just to kind of fill the ranks. But like I said, at
But
16.
you want it to be 16. You don't want more than 16. That's your
No.
magic number. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't do a good job. We couldn't do a good job teaching if we had more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't a moneymaker. This is not a. I'm a artist who. I'm a painter that teaches, not a teacher that paints, and so my money doesn't come from it.
Yeah, that's exactly my situation. And
But
in person, you really can't. You can't have more than I have 8 right now. I always had 12. That was my max, but I just cut it back. And I just, which was not easy to do, but I cut it back to 8 just because it is a drain,
yeah,
having students. Um, but it's also, I don't know about you, but I kind of need that in my life because I need that energy of students. I need the social interaction. I'm not one of these painters that can just lock myself in a room 6 days a week and paint by myself. I'd go freaking loony.
yeah. I did that for 25 years, and enjoyed it, to be honest.
Oh, did you? Oh man, I couldn't
I'm
do it.
fine with that. But yeah, how this thing came about. So Brock, our eldest son, is he just born to be an artist, basically. That the apple between me and Heidi, the apple dropped in the tree and it didn't move. And he just from day one just could do he's an artist. So anyway, he went down to the atelier, he checked out all the schools, decided he wanted more an optical type training. And the people that are running Richard Lack's school now is two of the people that I went to school with. And so I just called him up and I said, hey, how about this? Can I make you a deal? You cut off a little tuition for him and I'll come down and teach once a month. And I just wanted to come and
Why
I
didn't
could
you
hang
just
out.
teach him?
I know that, the whole father-son thing and the dynamic, and I'd be too, no, no. I did sort of. I did when he was about 14, 15, 16. We had a little mini atelier going in a way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and we would drive down once a month and just he'd jump in with figure models and stuff. And so we did some of that, but I'd be way too overbearing and it wouldn't have been good. But I didn't want to be part of his life and this part of, as a student. So anyway, I would come down once a month for 2 days and teach.
Yeah.
And, and we'd hang out. It was great. And here's where it was kind of funny. So at this time I've been painting for probably 20, 25 years and, doing fine, doing okay, I guess. And I'm listening to myself give this first critique to some advanced students. And I'm hearing the words coming out of my mouth. And I'm like, this makes no sense. This literally makes no sense. This is what I would do, but it makes no sense. And so I went home and I was like, what would? And so over the course of the 5 years he went there and me coming down and me verbalizing, when you teach, you have to take what you can somewhat do intuitively and you got to rationally think it through. And
Yeah,
then
you got to be
hearing
able to
yourself
explain it
think,
and
yeah,
justify
and,
it.
and like you say, you really don't know it until you explain it to a 5-year-old, which is the average art student, I guess. And,
Yeah.
so it forced me to rethink everything. And so by the time he graduated, I completely painted different than I had been painting. Paintings that would take 6 months took 3, and they were, I felt, twice as good. He at this time,
Really?
yeah, he at this time also had been teaching night classes, and he was seeing the benefit of that. He was offered a really phenomenal opportunity with the school. I was offered an opportunity to go over to Europe to teach for several years and help run a school. And so we just kind of thought, well, that'd be cool, either case, but heck, we might as well open our own school if we're going to teach a little bit.
Oh, so you opened this with your son?
Yeah, yeah,
Get out of town. That's so cool. What's your
yeah. So
son's
that was the
name?
genesis of,
What's your son's name?
Brock Larson.
Brock
Yeah,
Larson. I wonder if I follow him. That sounds familiar.
he's pretty much focused on landscapes, and he's in fact this year he was the judge for the Grand Marais Pleinier, but he was first place the last 2 years, and there's some good competition.
I
So
bet you. How do you spell Brock? ACH?
Broch.
I'm the worst speller.
Yeah. He's on Instagram, I know.
Yeah, I'm looking him up right now. Oh, yeah, I follow him. That's your
Okay.
kid?
Yeah.
No way. Let's pull him up here. Is that your grandkid?
Yeah. That's the latest.
Dude.
Little Henrik.
Oh, man. Yeah, he's got chops. And he's what, 30 something?
31. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely followed in your footsteps. That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually teaching my daughter right now. And it often kind of amazes me that it's working because if the personalities aren't just right,
Yeah,
it could be a disaster. I don't, and my son's actually coming home from a mission in 3 months and wants to study painting with me too.
that's
It's going to
great.
be interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but I know what you mean though. Not every kid can learn from their father, you know?
Well, I think it's just if you're going to be a good teacher, then you have to be somewhat removed or objective,
Yeah.
and balancing that with being a dad and at this stage kind of a buddy. It's just
It's tricky.
it's just tricky, and there's no need for it. He got a really fine education. I was able to be a bit of an influence, and so it worked out really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have another school here in Salt Lake, but I guess he could travel. Yeah. The thing I noticed is with my daughter, and I hope she doesn't, she edits this, so she's going to hear this. But the thing I
He
noticed
was
with
very
her,
nice, actually. I got to speak with her a little bit at the Portrait
she's
Society.
great. She's great. But I can tell with her, she's a little bit more sensitive to my critiques,
Yeah.
just a little bit, which makes perfect sense, right? I'm her dad, right? It's
Yeah.
like a little more, it stings a little more when it's coming from your dad. Um, but I treat her exactly the way I treat my other students in the classroom. And,
Yeah.
but I do sense just a little bit more like, "Arr," from her.
Silent
But
treatment at supper or something, or
yeah, she's got mad skills though. You'll be seeing her
yeah.
someday. She's doing great. But anyway, that's really cool. I had no idea he was your son. How about that? I'll have to get him on the podcast at some point.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to your work now. Um, got your, all
Doing
right.
archives. I'd go to archives, or is that the Instagram?
No, you're on Instagram. So here's your website.
Yeah, they probably have
So
more.
one of the things that's great about your work is you're not pigeonholed at all. You're doing everything, which is
I look
awesome.
forward to doing the same thing
Yeah.
over, and it's there's a plus and a minus of being pigeonholed in the market, and that was kind of an interesting thing to navigate
What
slightly.
do you
But
mean? I mean, I can speculate, but I'm curious what you're thinking.
I think people like to associate a person with a certain look or certain genre or whatever,
Yeah.
and I recognized early that people that once they got caught up in that, say they just did a beautiful, I don't know, beautiful flower still life, and then they did another, then they did another. Pretty soon that's what they were known for. And then they'd come in with a portrait or something, and people like, I don't get it. I thought you were a flower painter. And it was just it kind of stumbling.
Yeah.
So early on, I just made sure that every show I had several of everything just so I could grow them all. And some people come and they don't even look at my figure pieces. They could care less. They go right for the still lifes, and others are the opposite. And some like them both, but it's
So in a way, you pigeonholed yourself to being the artist that's not pigeonholed. That's your brand.
there you go. I guess so.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, that's Kwang Ho talks about that. He's like, I paint everything and it all sells. I'm like, he doesn't say it in an arrogant way. That sounded arrogant,
Yep.
but I'm saying that. But he does sell everything and he's all over the charts.
Yeah.
But like you, there is a cohesive nature to them. I mean, you can see your hand in all of it. And that's helpful too, I think. Anyway.
Well, one, I'd get bored pretty quick at things. What
Yeah.
I found was really advantageous for me doing this, we live in northern Wisconsin, so winters, you're not out painting outdoor figures. And I love that. I found Sorolla when I was like 28 or 29, and
Yeah.
I was,
He's so good.
just trying to understand how he saw and could convert in the intensity of sunlight using ground up dirt on canvas, basically.
And so fast.
But and fast and big, and just all the dynamics that go with painting outside, and wind and bugs, and so at the end of the summer, you're kind of beat up, to be honest. You're just kind of worn out. You're moving your canvas in one location, then you go. The sun's only good for an hour and a half, then you go down to the beach, and you got models that'll meet you there, and you work till noon, then maybe you're back in some garden somewhere, and you're watching the weather. You got your full sunny days, your half sunny days, your cloudy days, and so there's a lot of moving parts. And so in the winter, moving on to like still life, it's just nice and calm and
Yeah.
it's not going to move. But here's where it worked out for me is that maybe at the end of summer, my color would improve a little bit, my brush handling, my speed of decision making. But then I would maybe consider that, maybe the compositions I should have spent more time on. Maybe the drawing wasn't quite at the level. And so then in the still life, I would focus on those. So I'd spend more time designing them. I'd push the nuance in the drawing. And so what I'd find is that in the winter, my color usually improved in my still life, and then the following summer, my compositions and drawing abilities and whatever else would improve for the figures. And so they kind of played off each other well for me, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's brilliant. That makes a lot of sense.
I've been doing Jeff's online mentorship program for about a year now, and it is awesome. Everything is online, super streamlined. If you can be there, I mean, you have the ability to talk to him once a week and he can review your work and help you. If you can't be there, it's pre-recorded. You can go back and even re-watch things if you missed something during class or couldn't be there. So the online portion of it is almost better than real life because you can always go back to it, which is awesome. The demos are recorded. It's just like all available whenever you need it. And I'm a stay-at-home mom of 4 and my time is limited and it's also very interrupted. And so to be able to go back has been clutch for me. And you get to work with Jeff HEIN, who's awesome. He's tough. The assignments are simple, but difficult, and they're difficult to make us all better. And he's able to give us these assignments, coach us through it, help us stay excited to progress. And so it's just been a great experience. I am so grateful that he has been willing to take time away from his own art to offer all of us to have it. So if you're thinking about doing it, it's amazing.
To learn more about how you could have me as a personal mentor, check out the link to HEINAtelier.com in the show notes or video description. So do you always work from life, period?
If I can, yeah. If when you're doing portrait commissions or historical pieces, you got to use photographs. But I usually try to take a photograph and I run it through the copier till it's kind of grainy and crappy.
You
And
want
then I
to
don't
improvise.
stuck into that look, and then hire models and to pose with the clothes and so on. And I to be honest, I personally just don't enjoy working from the photographs that much. And some people do, and they do wonderful. And I just do my best with them. But I just really enjoy the interaction of
Yeah.
working directly, and it's
More magical. Yeah. I did it for so many years exclusively. Yeah. And it's, I still do it on occasion, but I am working on historical pieces right now. And I'm never going to finish this project. It's occurred to me that there's no way I'll ever finish it unless I start implementing photography, just because it speeds up the process so dramatically. But
the naturalists used it. I mean, some of the great, the Bachelor Lepage era people, they used photography. And I think that's the difference, can you use photography or will you be used by it? And and I think what you said, like you said, you painted from life for 20, 30 years. You see the difference.
Yeah.
And so you can avoid the pitfalls. And in the end, it's aesthetics. Maybe some people really like it to look like a photograph, and then that's good for them. That's what they should do.
Yeah, for me, it's not about an advantage or disadvantage anymore. I like working from life because it's more enjoyable, because you're with the thing, right? It's like the difference between going to Italy and watching a documentary about Italy on the History Channel. Yeah. Like, it's different being there, right? And that's how I feel when I'm doing a portrait with a figure, with an actual model. It's like you're really there. It's more intimate,
Like if you're to do a biography, if you're to do a biography of somebody, would you want to tape record them for a couple hours and then you have to develop a book out of that? Or do you want to like sit down with them every day? Okay, back when you were a kid, tell me about that one time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you just get more nuance, I guess. And
It's really, yeah, it's really much more enjoyable. But the photography thing, you can't beat the freak, man. It's it's convenient when you come to the studio and just turn on the monitor and start painting and don't have to wait for your model to show up. But
yeah, it's just something for each artist to decide. That's all.
yeah,
It's
it
I know
is.
there's a lot of controversy around it, but I think it should just be, just if you're doing what you love and you love how you're doing it, then it's the right thing to do, and
Yeah, it's true. I got to tell you, I was thinking this is a little off topic, but it goes back to what you said earlier. You had said something about how you feel like you're several people or people, you look like several artists. When I first started out, I was doing these pop art paintings. I call them pop art because it was influenced by Wayne Thiebaud. So
Mhm.
I'm doing these non-commissioned portraits on these graphic backgrounds. That might be some of the work you were familiar with back in the day.
That's when you first, those are the images I think of when
Yeah.
I first associate them with you.
So I was
They were
doing
lovely.
that. But I was also doing biblical stuff right from the start. And my dealer in Laguna at the time was like, do not let anyone know that you do biblical work.
Huh.
And he said, because my clients see that you're Christian, they won't buy your work.
And that's something.
Isn't that something? Yeah. He's not wrong. So there is a certain type of person out there that's that way. But so he had me make two separate websites. Like this was before social media, but at least had to have two separate websites. And it was interesting. I always felt bad about it. Like, I'm like, this is lame. I'm hiding my Christian work, But what's interesting, during that time, on several occasions, I'd have people come up to me and say, hey, there's another painter, Jeff HEIN, that does this other thing. I'm like, no, that's the same Jeff HEIN. He goes, no, they do biblical work. I'm like, no, that's me too. What? No. Or they know my biblical work and they're like, oh, I just saw a painter, Jeff HEIN, that does this pop art stuff. I'm like, no, that's me. Yeah. And like, what? No. It was funny.
Hopefully one came up and said, there's this hack artist out there stealing your name. And
Yeah, seriously. But eventually my guilt got to me and I'm like, screw this, man. If they're not going to buy my work, they're not going to buy my work. And then I combined it to one website, and everything turned out okay.
good.
But yeah, it's interesting though. It's people aren't used to seeing artists that do lots of different things. So I wouldn't say unusual to see it, but not particularly common. So it's kind of nice to see all this. So what do you want to focus on here first? Still life, portrait, landscape, figure.
Start with figure.
All right.
I mean,
Okay, so that's a slideshow. Okay, here we go. Just navigate your website here.
yeah. So
Yeah, these
so
are cool. Yeah,
all
you
these
are
are
prolific, dude. Holy moly.
oh, this is just a small little. I like to paint, but and these some of these go back quite a long ways. Um,
Wow. This one reminds me of Soroya big time.
well, the laundry series worked well for me because when you're painting outside from life, you're stuck with what's in front of you. And in northern Wisconsin, it's a lot of green. And when like my wife, she jokes, says we do have a washing machine and a dryer, but it was a subject matter that allowed me to manipulate and compose all the elements. So I could work like a symphony director in a way where I could use bounce light, reflected light, refracted light, transparent light. I could do colors, I could do patterns. I could keep it very abstract. It became a theme that I could just keep coming back to and impose abstract concepts and ideas and play with capturing light outside, just as Soroya had his subjects of the sails and kids and this and that. At least I feel that as an artist, it's not so much. It isn't always the subject matter. That's more the foil for us to kind of go out there and play and see what we can do with this color and convert it to an abstract painting that happens to look like something, at least
Mm-hmm.
or how I look at it. So that's why there's so many laundry pieces.
Yeah. Are you still doing that series, the laundry series? Is it something you come back to a lot?
This year I didn't. Last year I did a couple, or
Hold on
yeah,
one sec. Hold on
years
one
ago I
sec.
did the one on the top in the middle with the silhouette, the woman silhouetted.
So is this is this laundry thing something you come back to regularly, or is it something that's done?
It's been a couple years since I've done one. I think 3, 4 years ago, I did the one up in the middle with the woman silhouetted with all the, um,
Right here.
had this one there. And it's not life size, but it's close to.
Okay.
Um,
Man, yeah, wow.
I think 2 years before that, the second one in is with the two gals. That's probably the one I've been working towards. You get these abstract, vague, foggy notions of where this could go to someday. You have some idea of the piece you want to do, and I think that was kind of it. And I was fortunate. That's when I won the ARC figure thing. But
You did with this? That's
yeah,
amazing.
but
What category? Figurative or?
figurative, yeah.
That's great.
Um, so and then I think I've done. There's a couple more that I did in the last few years, but
This one's great too.
thanks. That was an early one,
And these are all done from life?
yeah, yeah.
Jeez Louise, man. So when you're working on, say, this one right here, where the lighting, or no, a better one might even be this one. What it's blowing.
Well, that's the situation. So here's what our schedule turned into. One thing we trained our kids not to move from birth, so they ended up being my models, and we pay them. It was part of their job. We live in a rural community, and a lot of their friends had to do chores on the farm, and we said, well, this is what you do with this family, and so they were great. So we would start the day in the summer where Heidi and I would get up early. And so she would pose from like 7:30 till 9 out the laundry. And so if it was windy,
You did it for an hour and a half a
yeah,
day.
if it was sunny, then we would, have another one ready to set up. Uh, if it was cloudy, that was a totally different animal then. And then from there, I'd probably about 9:30, then I'd take the kids, maybe two of them would pose in the garden till lunch. And then in the afternoon, we'd head to the beach and they'd take turns posing while the others played. And then we'd have a big bonfire or something. And that was kind of how our life was for many years, of just kind of going from painting to
Wow.
painting. And so I'd have maybe 7, 8 paintings going during the day at a time. And then like I say, I'd have my sunny ones, I'd have the semi-cloudy ones. And then I guess if it was raining, I'd have a still life or something in the studio to do. But
Yeah, but that doesn't explain how you get the windy. I mean, they're blowing, they're in motion. Did you just improvise on that?
you just wait for it to you catch it as it moves. I'd get the
That's
right
great.
on my brush, and then I'd wait for it to. It's like painting waves. You kind of understand how it works, and then you
Right.
just those elements. What's the shape? What's the value? What's the hue? And how is it a hard edge, soft edge? As it nestles up against the others? And so you just extract that specific information as the sheet would snap by. I'd look for just that one element and
So it's a
try to
combination of a million breezes, and you're just
exactly.
putting it all together, making sense of it.
Yeah, and you'd pick and choose and design, and that's the misnomer. People that we paint from life, or anybody painting actually our style, whatever you want to call us, narrative painters or classical realists or whatever. We're not just painting what we see. We're editing nature
Oh my
down to
gosh.
what's beautiful. I mean,
Yeah. That's my pet
so
peeve. I'm telling
yeah,
you. Because when you had mentioned before that it's, I think you said controversial, which is kind of a funny thing, the painting from life versus photographs.
yeah.
But when I was painting only from life, if I so much as mentioned it to the wrong person, I'd get pushback. Like, what, do you think you're better than me? Like, no, I just paint from life, Or I get,
There you
or I get, or I get this, well, life's painting from life is easier because everything is there. All the information is there. That one would drive me crazy
I just give him a
because,
can. Let's see
yeah,
what you can do, buddy.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, so yeah, maybe if you're doing a perfectly still static pose of a single head, maybe I'll give you that. But even then, a great artist isn't copying. A great artist is making changes, improvising, changing color, value, all kinds of things.
Exactly.
And I'm
You're
just like, you don't have a clue what we do working from life when people would say that.
translating the 3D world on a two-dimensional surface. That in itself is
Oh, that's a
not.
huge challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to mention the moving. I mean, in the moving, like And I'm doing multi-figure with as much as 50 figures in one thing, and it's
Crazy.
like you have no idea how hard it is and how much you have to improvise. So when I look at stuff like this, I know what you're doing because I've done it, and it's this is what I imagine you going through when painting this, because this is what I would go through. Correct me if I'm wrong. It blows, you make a few strokes, design the sheet. The next morning, or even just a few minutes later, you're like, oh, that shape sucks. You wait for it to blow again. You make a few marks, change the shape. You're like, it's a good shape, but it doesn't quite feel like a blowing sheet. Wait till it blows again, try again. Am I wrong?
Exactly right.
Yeah,
And, I
that's
would go
not
out with
easy to do.
I do a quick thumbnail because I'd have a generic idea of what the
Yeah.
main shapes and patternings or what I was going for. But that's where focusing on composition in a way that I consider and take my time would allow for me to make better split instant decisions when I was in those kind of
Yeah.
circumstances, which is what you really are when you're outside painting from nature with people that move and live and breathe, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's so much to choose from. How do you design that how do you take that chaos and design it into a situation of patterning that's pleasant and fits a composition. So
Yeah. Well, you did an amazing job on all of these. Really unbelievable. And these are mostly your children then?
quite a few. I used to, when we first moved here, I'd hire the neighbor kids, and then I
No kidding.
started realizing that why am I spending time with other people's kids? I grab my own kids. And so then they started posing, and then I started realizing everybody that buys my work is buying my kids, and I don't have a single one. So then I started always having a painting going that we knew we were going to keep as a family. So I've
Oh, that's nice.
quite a few of them that we've set aside and hung on to, which I'm happy for.
That portrait I put in the porch side, it was my first family portrait. And my kids are grown pretty much. It was like the plumber's sink, you know? It's so,
That was a beautiful piece, complicated piece too, but beautiful. I
yeah,
mean,
thanks. But yeah, my son, well, before he left, he said, Dad, you've never painted us. I mean, I have painted them, but like you, I put them in biblical paintings or paintings that I was selling,
yeah.
and I didn't keep them. So he's like, Dad, when I get home, you have to have a family portrait done. I'm like, all right. So that's why I did that. But it's crazy because it's hard to do that when you know you're not going to sell it. You're like, well, I also got to feed you kids, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's one, if you go up a little higher, there's one that's, I get a kick out of it anyway, where keep
Yeah.
going. Okay. The two girls on the bench.
Oh, yeah. Is that your kids?
So the curly haired one's my niece, and the one's my daughter Sophie, who was, I think, 4 or 5.
It's
And so
adorable.
she would pose, 3, 4, 5 hours a day or whatever, 5 days a week. That was just what we did. And she got to play in that too. But I mean, then her niece
She,
was
at
going to
4 or
come.
5 years old, she'd pose for 4 or 5 hours a day.
She would, she'd take turns,
Wow.
They were great. And but her niece or her cousin Clara was going to come and play with her. And she was so excited she was going to get a day off playing with Clara. And so Clara shows up and, well, Clara, what do you want to do? I want to pose for your dad. So you can see Clara's face, she's all excited. This is great. And Sophie, that was as close to a pleasant look I could get on her.
Oh my
So kept
gosh.
that one. That was just a funny piece.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences. People love to pose for painters, but your own kids, sometimes.
Yeah, they've been there, done that.
Yeah, it's old news. Yeah, these are amazing. All right, let's go back. Let's see some of your other stuff, your landscape here. I guess you've already kind of shown your chops on landscapes with the figures, but it's interesting. You're very different than your son. He really went kind of his own direction.
Yeah, which is great to see.
It is great to see. Yeah.
He's his skill in composition and in creating painting. So he's worked really hard. He'll take studies and then create these large pieces that are exceedingly beautiful and convincing. And if it's not in front of me, I'm really tied to more painting directly plein air.
Right.
So his compositions and his ability to arrange patterning and that is really something.
That's got to make you proud to see him being successful like that.
Yeah, yeah.
What about your other two kids? What'd they end up doing?
They were fairly talented in painting and drawing too, but each kid kind of carves out their own thing. So our middle one kind of went more acting. She did a lot of plays and this and that. And our youngest one, uh, much more a musician, even though they were all musical
Wow, they're
too.
all artists in their
Yeah,
own
well,
right.
not professionally, but it was a strong passion of theirs growing up, and
Right.
still somewhat so.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to pick out a couple of my favorites here. I don't know why, but you can't click on these for some reason. Is it? Are you aware
Really?
of that? I'm sure.
No, that one actually that one
Yeah, you can't click on them, but you can see it. Yeah, I love the lighting, the reflection of the sky, the translucency of the water. It's gorgeous.
I was getting my tire fixed, and I had an hour to kill, and so behind the mechanic shop they had this little swamp, and I just set up.
Are you
Did that.
serious? Is
Yeah,
that oil?
little 8x10 oil.
You did that in an hour and a half? That's awesome. Yeah, and this one's really interesting with the logs, such an unusual subject. Yeah, and again, all of these are plein air.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were entirely plein air. Now, these have a photographic look, almost like you got Boku behind it or something.
I just went and set up in the field, sat down in the weeds, and painted
No
away.
joke.
Hmm.
That's wild. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Love it. So what's your favorite thing to paint between all these subjects? Or is it just seasonal? You do what you can do.
I think if I go through kicks, but by the end of summer, like I said, you're feeling pretty beat up and you're just kind
Right.
of feeling done with it. But by the time spring comes around, I'm so bored with still lifes. I just get me out of here.
Oh,
So I
okay.
kind of like to I like to move from subject to subject and get a fresh eye and a new approach. You kind of fall into, I don't know if mannerisms is the right word, but a rhythm that
Yeah.
I want to shake up a little. So
Yeah. So I want to get back to, let's see. Well, here it is. Oh, I clicked on that one. That one worked.
Really?
Yeah, there it is. There's the award winner. And then they bought that. Michael Klein's museum bought that. What's the name of that museum again?
New Salem.
New Salem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
what an awesome honor that is.
yeah.
They own that. Have you been to the museum?
I have. It's stunning. It's more impressive than you'd imagine.
Really?
Yeah, it is. Not only the building itself and what they've done with it, the vision, Bartolo's vision is insane. How they've gone to such extremes to really do it right. It's
Yeah.
just not over the top in any way, shape, or form. Everything kind of serves the purpose of creating an environment that houses beautiful work, and then the work itself is really a amazing cross section of not only just American painters but overseas too, and it gives you a really nice flavor about what's happening. If anything, it should cast some shame on the other museums out there that you go into the modern art wing and there isn't work like this hanging.
Yeah. I got to get out there and check it out. I'd love to have him back on and just have a tour of the museum somehow. It's an
I'm sure.
amazing thing that he's doing, and his patrons that are paying for it. What a gift to society.
Yeah, like I said, they're really doing it right. And
Yeah, that's
kudos.
awesome. Yeah, so this portrait I find really awesome. How old were you when you painted this?
That's probably 3-4 years ago.
Okay, that's a great
It was in the
portrait.
winter. I was bored of painting still lifes, and
Did you sell that or keep it?
no, I got it. It's right next to me.
You just carry it everywhere. You just keep it with you all the
Yeah,
time.
I hang it up in the bedroom and then I bring it for dinner.
Sleep with it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh man, now this isn't you though.
My kids won't
That's
post for
not
me
you,
anymore.
is it?
So I'm stuck looking at that. So
Is this you too?
yeah, that was from probably 10 years ago.
Oh, okay, because your beard's all black. Wow, it makes a difference.
Life happens.
Yeah, that makes
Usually
a
I'm
big
trying to work
difference
on
with
a
your
new
beard.
palette. I won't impose myself on somebody else when I'm working on new palettes or new underpainting techniques, or To me, it's a chance to experiment
Yeah.
and not waste someone's time.
Have you ever tried doing a self-portrait in one of those non-reversing mirrors?
I didn't even know they existed.
Oh, dude.
Never heard of
So
that.
there's well, technically mirrors don't reverse. They just reflect directly back, right? But they call it a non-reversing mirror because you see yourself the way other people see you. So technically it's a reversing mirror. But what it is two mirrors that are joined together in a V shape and they have a
Sure,
perfect seam.
sure.
And so one side reflects one side of your face and the other side reflects the other side of your face.
Huh.
And if it meets in the middle and cuts perfectly so that they fit back together. And what it does is it creates what other people see instead of what you see in the mirror.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, but it's very disconcerting if you're asymmetrical because you look in it and all of a sudden you see what the world's seeing and it's not pretty. You're just like, what? That is wrong. You know, and I'm pretty asymmetrical, like my nose is all crooked. I remember looking at it and being like, God, the world has to be subject to that face on a daily basis. But the reason I ask is because I bought one so that I could paint self-portraits because I have such a giant ego. I want to make sure people know I can get a good likeness.
Good side.
Because my wife, this is what spurred the purchase. It was like a $300 mirror. It's not cheap, but my wife and son came in when I was doing a self-portrait and they said, Dad, there's something wrong with it. There's just something not quite right. And I was like, I'm telling you, it's right. I'm looking right in the mirror. It's right. They're like, I don't know, Dad. I don't know. So I walk my son and my wife over and I say, look at me in the mirror. And they looked at me in the mirror and they were like, oh, yeah, you look different in the mirrr. I'm like, yeah, that's what I see. And they're like,
That's
yeah, that does look like you in the mirror. So I just wonder if I just wondered if you'd ever tried it because most of us have a different face in the mirror than we
right.
do to the public, you
So
know?
that'd be interesting to see. I suppose what looked strange to you is just what you saw in the mirror you're used to, so that doesn't strike you as strange anymore.
No, yeah, the mirror, the reversed version of me is what
Yeah,
I'm comfortable with. It's the normal
yeah.
version of me that I'm like, whoa, that's not normal.
I'll have to look into that. That's
Yeah,
interesting. I
they're
wonder.
pretty cool. They're pretty cool. I've yet to do a portrait with it, but I'm anxious um,
Mhm.
to just, I don't know, do something that actually looks like me to the rest of the world and not just to
Yeah.
me. But anyway, let's see. This one is one that I find really interesting too. Is this your daughter?
No, actually, that's my niece, the
Ah,
same
of course,
cousin.
the curly hair.
Yeah, she's a Shirley Temple for sure, and so
Yeah, that's great. And again, these are all from life.
yeah. So these were my kids. This would be at after supper, just as the sun was going down. Come on, kids, one more to work on. And you don't see the TV we had set up over here for most of the time, and that was the thing they had. My wife giving them, when we were posing and hanging out as a family, we had great food and we had music, or we had, they'd each get a break and then they could go
Yeah.
play when posed. And so we weren't quite the tyrants. Maybe I made myself sound out like to be, but we got to be together. That was the main
Yeah.
thing. But this was a piece that, yeah, we spent the whole summer working on night after night after night.
And I think they'd value that later in life. My kids do. When they see pictures of themselves out in the public, they have some pride in it, I think, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're just worried I'm going to ask them to pose again still, but
Yeah. They're like, we paid our dues. Back off, Dad. All right. And then let's see. We'll look at your still life. Oh, wait. There we go. Yeah, these are something else. Your still life are much more refined than the rest of your work, which makes sense because they don't go anywhere. Do
well,
you think that's why,
I
or do you
think
have a?
I think I just find you set that aperture to the beauty that you think maximizes what it is you're painting. And so I think with still life, it just offers a layer of beauty that you can only get in refinement. But some of those, I think if you saw some of these in person, you'd be surprised at the
The
brush stroke.
looseness? Yeah.
Yeah, they're
No,
not,
I can tell that they're painterly still. Maybe they're just larger scale, so they look tighter. Is that part of it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, they are probably more refined than the landscapes and so on, but
Yeah.
still, they're not
No,
detailed.
right. No, they still look painterly. This is so cool. I don't know. It's the weirdest one here, and I love it. Did you sell this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a sick one. I maybe I just like it because it's so different. So you're working with real fish a lot. Does your studio just reek or what?
It has at times. Um, I've also painted a lot of game birds and so on, and that can get bad too. So,
Oh man. Do you
but
when you
learn to
paint
paint
game
fast.
birds, are you going out and hunting them yourself and then sticking them there to paint or what?
Yeah, there should be some pheasant pieces. There's a big turkey piece. I don't.
Where is
Um,
that? No.
all right. Okay. Go to the upper left. Go to the
Oh
top one.
yeah, that's something you shot?
Yeah, but go above that even,
And so
and
it's
then
just sitting there like corroding while you're painting it.
well, and okay, that's another benefit of painting outside. When you've got an hour and a half with the sun moving across,
Yeah.
you got to paint fast. When you got a dead bird decomposing, you paint fast.
Yeah, no joke. Well, you
So
said to go up. I don't
especially
see another bird.
you can see up in the corner. I guess I don't know if you can, but I just finished this piece with the disco
Oh
ball.
yeah. Oh yeah, that is big.
They're still hanging up there. The fish is up there.
Okay, so that for the audience, that puts it in perspective here. Here,
Here, should I
let's
turn
switch.
the?
No. We got it. We got it right
Oh,
there.
there you go.
So that puts it in perspective. That's behind you a ways. What is that, like a 3 foot or a 4 foot canvas?
I think it's probably 42 by 42.
So
If I'm
about 3.5 feet
Yeah.
by 3.5 feet. And then you compare that to the monitor, which is like a thumbnail. Yeah, that puts it in perspective. And I assume most of your paintings are more large scale like that.
They're all life size. Yeah. So like the vacuum that you're on is life size vacuum. It's probably 5 or 6 feet tall or whatever it would be. And
This is sick too. Yeah, these are something else, man. Yeah, you must paint pretty fast. You've got a lot of work.
I do. That's, I've always been fortunate, I guess, that I can, well, but with that said, I think the disco ball, that took me 4 or 5 months.
Not
A lot
alone
of,
though. You're working on other things too, I would assume.
usually 2 or 3 things at a time. Yeah.
Okay.
But
And so, I mean, I guess the reality is you've been painting for 40 years.
yeah. Well, I think that's what I was kind of inferring when I began teaching down at the atelier again and rethinking through my process, which was working fine. I mean, I was selling shows. I mean, I wasn't unhappy with my work by any means, but in thinking through how I went at it, I would catch, well, that there's got to be a better way or a more efficient way. And so if anything, I refined the processes to where I didn't necessarily make things up any different or take shortcuts. I just knew how to get down the road quicker.
Okay, so
Um,
can you tell us about that? What did you discover?
it's so natural to me now. Really just, it's about deciding, it's not about trying to paint the whole object in front of you. It's extracting one piece of information at a time. So more than anything, you have to train yourself to ignore. What typically would happen for me for decades, literally, you'd have a first day painting, great lay-in. Okay, this is good. Here we go. And then you start working it, and pretty soon it's a mess, and something's wrong, but something's right, and you fix this, and that wasn't right, and now you ruin that, and you basically go in circles till at the end you sort of pull it together and sign it. It was typically how my work went, and if you worked long enough on it, it would come together.
Right.
And there, you that was based on just look at it till you see a mistake and then fix it. Whereas I started thinking in reverse. With the final product, when you look at someone else's painting, there's some very definitive things. There are a series of darkest darks. There is some very definitive drawing shapes and proportion. There's certain things that once they're done, it's like, yes, that's correct. So how can you get there? And then how can you create these anchors that you can then use those so you're not fixing the wrong thing? Because by the time you get the painting looking pretty good and it's more apples to apples, Well, then the mistake's buried within 1,000 brush strokes.
Right.
But start out very slow and very methodical and ignore most of the information and just extract that which you can confirm. So if you've got two notes and you're trying to compare and contrast the value and the hue, and say it's a number 2 value and a number 7 value, you can kind of fudge them either way. They're going to look pretty good, either one. You put a number, 7 by a 6, and if you're a little bit too dark, that 6 is going to look like a 7. If you do it a little bit too light, it's going to pop out like a 5. There's going to be a stronger edge. So just by finding your anchors, your jet blacks, your highest highlight, which is pure white, you can't do anything else but that, and find the notes next to it, and make those decisions that, I know those are really close. That game of telephone, where you tell someone a story and they go on the line. If you wait too long, it's a completely different story. But if
Right.
you can start with the fact, do the next one, confirm it, do the next one, confirm it. So my paintings start out much slower now, much more methodical.
Yeah.
And they go like this. And then once I have all the components and I understand the relationships, well, then I just pull it together. And
Yeah.
so through that, the paintings, like I said, that would take 6 months, would take 3. Well, now I think they're taking, a lot less. There's a second thing too that we came up, when you're teaching, you start thinking more, what do I do? How do I do this? Or you see in the students' work, and I know this is familiar to you and everybody else who teaches, you start seeing things that don't work, but you also see things that might work better because you're looking at their work because you could care less. You're objective. You don't have your ego involved compared to when you look at your own work. And I started recognizing and wondering, why are you guys trying to work on the little nuance of the side of the nose when you don't even have the background laid in? Or there's all this stuff that's so easy. Why aren't you just doing that first? But we're drawn into, like, if I could just get that eye right, the hardest thing, then everything else will be easy. At least that was my personality.
Right.
When no, got a flat background painted flat, black hair, that's easy. Goes into this dark shadow. That's a simple decision, just like I was explaining. It's a soft edge flowing there. Pretty soon, you do all the easy stuff, and you have all this really good information around the eye, which is like, oh, yeah, this is like this is different than that, this is a little darker than this, and this goes like that, eye's done. And so just by following through, just paint only the simplest decision. I think there's a painting on here, there's a fish on a teapot. I don't even know if it's on the website or not, but go ahead and just keep scrolling. I'll tell you if we see it. Pretty sure somebody, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I challenged myself with this painting to
Bummer. I want to see it.
yeah, I know it's on my Instagram, but anyway,
That's all right. We'll pull up your Instagram.
Teapot in the corner with a fish on it. So,
Fish on a teapot. We need to see
yeah,
this.
I'm pretty sure it's on there. What do I know? But I
It's
challenged
only your
myself-
Instagram, man. Let's see.
It's not. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Anyway, what were you going to say?
I challenge myself to do what I tell the students to do, and that painting should have taken me a week.
Yeah.
Maybe. I did it in a day. Just
One day.
by following my own rules. So
Yeah.
it's allowed me to be far more productive and not skimp on, I think, the quality of where I'd like it to be.
Yeah. Someone told me years ago, slow is fast,
Yeah.
which was so perfect because and I've learned that over and over and over again, or haven't learned it over and over again. I guess depends on how you look at it, where I'll just be flying through something and realize I just need to slow it down, make smart, careful decisions, because the time is in the fixing mistakes. That's where you lose all your time.
Yeah.
And just sitting there trying to figure out what your mistakes were.
Well, a painting is just the final skin where you finally made some good decisions. Why not
Yeah.
make them the first skin?
Yes, do
Yeah.
it the first time, right?
Yeah, and in theory that makes sense, but doesn't always work out, obviously. But
Yeah.
yeah, what I think SEAL teams have slow is steady and steady is fast, or something like that. Is there
Huh.
something?
Yeah, the analogy I use with my students often, I don't know if it's a good one, but I used to have a handyman business. So this makes a lot of sense to me. Before I was a painter, I was a handyman. And I use this analogy. It's like you got to get your framing. If you're building a house, you got to get your framing right, straight, plumb, level
Yep.
before you
Yep.
pick out the curtains and the paint colors,
Yep.
right? It's like,
Perfect.
but everyone wants to pick out the paint colors and the curtains and what they're going to hang on the walls before they've even got and they got crooked framing. And it's like, you can't, you got to get that straight. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
No, it's like that little book I wrote that, it's definitely not a how-to book, but there's general parameters and philosophies that I've learned that work for me or that I teach at the school, and just how to kind of maximize these big mistakes we can tend to make and get caught up in. And that's definitely one of them, is just rushing, just wanting to get excited to finish the painting instead of just enjoy the process and do a good job.
yeah, yeah, no kidding. And it's more enjoyable that way because you don't leave every evening in major anxiety because you just left a painting with all kinds of problems.
Right.
Although I still leave with anxiety most nights, but probably because no matter how hard I try, I still make mistakes. That's the
Never easy.
downside.
Well, and then when it gets easy, usually then you set up something more difficult or more challenging just because you get bored otherwise. So
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Is it just me or the rest of you guys also get weirdly excited when you order new paint? Because I don't know about you, but when I get paint in the mail, it feels like Santa just dropped my Christmas presents off at my doorstep. With Vasari paint, my paint of choice and the podcast sponsor, it's even more exciting. And let me show you why. Because when Vasari shows up, it comes in this incredible box where each tube lays in this little compartment perfectly formed around the tube in this nice soft foam. And it's surrounded by velvet, red velvet. Now you got to ask yourself, if a paint comes so carefully protected and surrounded by red velvet, you got to wonder if this paint is worthy of royalty. It is. Vasari is. So if you haven't tried Vasari, you're seriously missing out. And the thing about Vasari, it's not only the best paint out there, it's also made by an incredible company that's been around for 30 years and knows its customer by name. Do yourself a favor, go to vasaricolors.com and order yourself some for your next painting. All right. I want to go back to what I brought up earlier. This thing that you wrote that I apologize, I didn't get a chance to read it, but tell me about it. Tell me about what it is that you're doing here.
Yeah, I didn't set out to do it. It was during the lockdown in COVID, and I think I was just going to kind of put together some basic ideas to pass on to the students. Just hey, here's some kind of little nuggets to mull over type thing, and kind of wondering myself, what do I know about this art business, and where do I sit on things? And it just turned into a however many years it's been, 3-4 year process. It also was tied to the fact that, again, after having my own school for, I guess, several years at that point, I remembered that I've seen a lot of students through all the different schools come and go. I've seen a lot of students who had just insane more talent than I ever did. They had better student work. And I've noticed that most of them aren't painting anymore. And it just, so many people fall by the wayside. And realizing that it had nothing to do with what we were most concerned with when we were a student, which is, do I have any talent and can I learn this? It's like, no, are you going to show up every day? Are you going to do your best? Are you going to have grit? Are you going to have the right attitude? Are you going to, if you get knocked down, are you going to get up again? Are you teachable? Are you respect the information you're getting? Are you going to doubt everything? There's all these other parameters that really lean into more what makes an artist or not an artist, or if they're going to be successful. So I just go through the book and kind of tell the inside story from my vantage point of, you guys are worried about this, but here's the truth of it, from my view, my version of the truth of it, of what I've seen over the decades of what it takes to be a good art student. And so it's not specific to my school in any means. It hopefully would be for any student going into naturalistic traditional painting. You want to, this isn't be for the modernists in any way, but if you want to really learn to paint from life and paint from nature and paint a scene that's representational, there's some certain things you have to learn, but more about, which is not easy. And if you're going to get through that, and not only get through that, but then turn it into a career, well, there's a whole bunch of steps I don't think you're even considering here, possibly. So it's my way of saying this is what you're getting into. And if you think it's just going to be, fun openings and cafes and berets and you get to be an artist, it's like, no, you're going to be working by yourself. You're going to be an entrepreneur. You're going to have to be a salesman. You're going to have to, design the product, build the product, market the product, package the product. And not to make it callous, you're going to have to do it in an inspired and creative way and become your own artist. And do it if you're probably going to want to do it the best you can. And our competition's hanging in all the museum walls, and they did it really, really, really well. So how are you going to do this? And so it was just my take on from a lot of mistakes I've made and things I kind of figured out from them, and just watching other people and talking with other artists, just kind of where I sit now, thinking this is kind of what it takes to be an artist. Because I find it very sad for the people that have all this talent, who are become well trained, that are fortunate enough to get a good training, and then not to do it, to something skips them, trips them up. I've seen people that, they just can't sell their work, so they quit. Well, your work's fine. You're just a horrible marketer. You got to play the game. I've seen people graduate, get into a big gallery, sell out 2 big shows. That destroys them.
Wait, what? Why?
I've seen where
because they can't beat themselves at that point. They can't.
Well, that they get caught in this niche. So for the next 10 years, they paint the same thing over and over again, and pretty soon they get burned out, or they just kind of, since it's uninspired, they fade away, or they go buy the house and the new car and whatever else, and then the next show doesn't. And then they screw themselves over that way, or they get this massive ego, and that doesn't do anybody any good. I've seen where I know a few individuals that had big shows, and then for whatever reason, the gallery, after building their prices way high too fast, then dropped them. Well, they're stuck at these prices, and yet they were big in that gallery, but outside no one's heard about them yet. They have to struggle out of that pit. I've seen, people marry the wrong person. There's
That's a big thing right there.
None of which have to do really with the work you're doing.
Yeah. Do you write about all this stuff in this book here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to read it. Are you going to publish this in any way? Are you going to put it out, or mostly just send it to friends?
We're on the final editing. I mean, I'm hoping by this weekend we'll have it done, and then we're going to start exploring that world. Like I said, I didn't set out to write a book, but pretty soon I had notebooks full of this stuff, and I got to do something with it. And so,
yeah, I'm really anxious to read it. It sounds interesting. Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking how art is such an odd thing, at least in this century and the previous century. And that, like, if I wanted to become a baker, but I only wanted to bake what I wanted to bake, I didn't want anyone to tell me what I'm supposed to be baking, then the only way to do that is to open my own bakery and run my own business and be my own boss. So that means I have to be a baker. I have to be a financial guy. I have to be all the things you listed, right? But in the art world, people think that you're going to have that kind of freedom and not have to be an entrepreneur, right? And the only way to be an artist that paints whatever the heck you want is to run your own business. Otherwise, you better be an illustrator, or you better find some job that's going to tell you what to paint every day. And then you won't have to have that. But if you're going to be someone who wants to paint what you want to paint, you got to have a lot of other skills. Right.
Well, and then, on the other side, say there's just somebody, they just don't want to market. They get in the rare good gallery that don't tell them what to paint. And you will just market everything you have. Well, there's a cost to that. And I think that's the other thing I try to point out is that say you've got a $10,000 painting. That in the gallery will hang and sell for $10,000. Well, you've spent there 2, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever. Your cost of goods isn't that much. It's probably $30, $40, right? For paint and canvas, $50, whatever, depending on the size. You're going to put a $200, $300, $400 frame on it. You're going to ship it, which could be these days $200, $300. So
yeah,
you got $1,000 into it. the gallery hangs it at excuse me, 10,000. They sell it, they give you 50%. And so basically you get 5, subtract the 1, taxes are going to take out, another 20%. So you got $3,500 on your $10,000 value painting.
And they get 5,000.
Huh?
And they get 5,000.
Right, but they have their costs too. So now if it's a good gallery and they're growing your name and raising your prices and you don't want to do any of the marketing, which is a time killer, that's a good deal. But just know that it's going to cost you that much. You're on that $10,000 painting, you're going to net $3,500 maybe going through the galleries. And then the other thing is, so then given our day and age where people can find you on the internet, the other guy reaches out and says, hey, I really like that painting. I want one too. And you're thinking, and he said, I'll offer you $7,500 for it though. And you're like, I'm making $2,500. No, you're undercutting the gallery. And you're selling your $10,000 painting, which is the value, for very cheap. And the gallery will hear about it, and it's just unethical. So that's going to screw you over.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, when I did my shows, I mean, we worked hard. I painted for a year and a half.
Yeah.
At a certain point, we just quit. And then frame, design catalogs, hire staff, do the marketing. The shows would be very expensive to put on. And so you go into this your situation in debt and with a lot of time spent, but it averaged out at the end of all my shows about 23% total cost. So I would gain 25% of income, which allowed us to paint and live for another, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, rather than if I had done it through a gallery. So it's about what I talk about is you just got to kind of know yourself, and you got to these are the realities. There's not one right or wrong or better or worse, but don't be surprised when this happens. And don't think, I just sold out a show and now I'm, you got taxes, you got things to take care of and live off of. And so anyway, it's just kind of the nitty-gritty reality of what this art world is like. And so that's why I think I titled it, what the hell are you thinking? Because we're going to open your eyes a little bit.
And I would argue, though, that even if you have a gallery, you still have to be a bit of a business person, because you have to know how to communicate with the gallery.
Exactly.
And not get bullied. You just have to know how to not be taken advantage. You have to develop some instincts.
Yep.
Right. It's amazing to me how I'll talk to people, whether they be students from my own students or other people's students, or just people starting out, and the questions they have, they're all reasonable questions. But it's amazing to me what an artist is willing to put up with just to get into a gallery. Right. Because they feel like that's the end all be all. Like, if I can get into a gallery, I'm somebody. And it's not like, that's not how it is. It's not, it's don't let yourself be beat up by a gallery just to be able to have that satisfaction of saying that you're represented.
Right.
So there's even that business sense, which is a little more subtle.
Well, and even the philosophy that you have to work through in your own mind of, it's one thing when you're a student and you're painting and their worksheets, and you're just trying to get better, you're really painting for yourself, versus when you're painting for a show or a commission. Suddenly there's this little voice back here. It's like, what are they going to think? Are they going to like it? You gotta learn to ignore all that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, at least in my mind, the best work I'm going to do is the work that I think is the best. It's not because I think someone else will think it's the best or someone else is going to approve or like it. And so I tell my students, like, when I'm in my studio, I'm 100% art. I could care less about anything, the selling it, all that. I'm just going to do the best I can to create it. But once I sign it, it's not this precious commodity and my ego's all involved. This is a product now that I got to market and sell. And I got to do it in a very rational and objective way. Otherwise, I'm just going to be too emotionally involved and mess it up with the clients or the galleries, or I won't know how to price it. My ego will be involved and way too much. And so there's these kind of different things that when you run into them, they were difficult. They took a long time to kind of sort through. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think, maybe there's a few of these things that I ran into that if other people hit on it, it's like, oh no, this sounds familiar. Maybe this isn't so bad, or maybe this isn't just me being an idiot. It just, yeah, this is part of it.
Yeah. Are you in a gallery now?
Um, Slightly, couples, just slightly.
You're not. No, it's not your main bread and butter at this point.
No, I've got enough clientele where I sell work, and then like I said, just a lot of commissions.
Be hard to give up 50% after getting used to that, right?
It's really hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
I haven't
Yeah,
been in a gallery since 2008 during that
yeah,
first recession in 2008. Not first recession ever, but you know what I mean? That recession back in 2008.
that was a
Yeah, I left the gallery at that point to take a sabbatical and then never went back. I don't think I could at this point. It would be to give up that much money.
yeah. No,
Um,
I'll be in a group show, or it's fun to be involved and just be with other artists and
yeah.
this and that occasionally. But that's why I even hesitate to say where I'm at, just because I'm not doing a very good job feeding them work or anything like that. So
Oh, right. Gotcha. All right. Well, the final question I always ask every artist, you've already given us a lot of advice, but I'm going to ask for one more piece of advice. So, for an aspiring artist, what's one piece of advice you would give that you wish you had or that you did have that was helpful to you? You just listed off a ton of advice, so I'm really putting you on the spot here, but
I think through carefully if this is the right path. I mean, if you love playing certain sports, but
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be a professional athlete, but I still love playing the sports. And art might be that for a lot of people. But if it's not, if it's like, no, I need to do this. This is my path forward. Do it with full gusto, with full confidence that every wall you run into, you're going to go over, around, underneath. You're going to get past it. You will not let it stop you. You get knocked down, you get up. You get knocked down, you get up. It's just, you just know that this is going to be the long haul, and you want to peak late in life for your career, and you're just going to build a career by not quitting. If you don't quit, you will never fail. So that would be the big thing. Just go
Good
at it with it.
attitude. Yeah, that's a good attitude. Have you ever, I feel guilty because I keep bringing up the same books, but I can't help it because they've meant so much to me, or they meant so much is probably a stretch. They've influenced me so much, or I've been so inspired by them. But this book, Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. Have you read that? I don't remember the
I've heard of
author.
it. I've never read it. I'll have to check that.
So the author makes the argument that we shouldn't do what we're passionate about. We should do what we're good at. And then if we're good at it and we're successful in it, we'll become passionate. And he says we're people particularly in recent generations are just taught that chase what you love. If you love acting, become an actor. If you want to be a singer, become a singer. If you want to become a painter, become a painter. He's like, no, if you don't have it in you, like if you don't have the ability to be really good at those things, he says, don't do them. Find something you're really good at.
Yeah.
Be so good they can't ignore you. And then you'll become passionate about it. I just found that really interesting. And as a father, I would give that advice to my kids. It's like, if you don't have the ability to really make a difference in this thing, it might not be the thing for you. What are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
That's a tough one. I really am almost on both sides, because say if I had loved to play basketball, I would have never made pro because I have a 3-inch vertical leap. It's just like
I bet you get at least 4 inches. Come on.
maybe 4 on a good day, but that would do it. And until you really try, you don't know. Also, so it's but
Well,
yeah,
I
on
don't
the
think
other
he's
hand,
suggesting out of the womb, but I think at some point he's like, you have to make a decision.
yeah, no, it's tough because you
Yeah,
don't um
it is tough. That's why
really
I brought
try,
it
you
up.
don't know how good you can be. But then again, there's so many people, I want to be an artist, this will be fun. It's like, what does that mean really? Or
Yeah.
if you want to be an athlete, think of how many kids that you started out in school with that were just really the best little athletes at the time. How many of them were playing in junior high? How many in senior high? How many went to college? Out of those great ones that went to college, how many of them even made pro? Out of pro, how many of them lasted 2, 3 years? After that, who made MVP? Who is the people we remember now? That's a pretty steep pyramid with a
Yeah,
lot at the bottom and not many at the top. But, watching the Michael Jordan Netflix, what was it called? Fascinating, actually.
that was good. I don't
Yeah,
remember what it was
just
called either, but
how
yeah.
hard he worked, and how he made himself the best. So I don't know, you don't know till you try, but then again, you can be delusional pretty quick too. So I
Yeah.
guess that's what American Idol shows us, right?
Yeah.
Other people think they can sing.
I imagine there's a spectrum. You're a student that either goes to your school or mine, right? And you're not the best student in the class.
Mhm.
So that doesn't mean you're not talented. And I
Right.
would say to the student like that, if I saw potential in them, yeah, keep going. You don't have to be the best at the start to be great. You can work, can make up the difference, right? And that's where passion can sort of lift you up and bring you up to where you need to be to make a living at this. But if you really struggle, I mean, it's really a bear becoming an artist, being good at this, then I would say passion's not enough. And that's why I say it's a spectrum. It's not like there's a certain amount of skill that's necessary to be great. But in my years of teaching, I've seen a huge range of natural aptitude for this stuff. And there are some that I would say, this probably isn't right for you. This is going to be a really tough road. You're going to really have a hard time. And there are others that I'd say, man, you got the potential. If you can work hard, go for it. I guess so. In this is what I'm getting at. I would agree with the book to this degree. I would agree with them on this level. Passion alone isn't enough to make a living.
No.
Right? That's what I would say. And I think there's a lot of people out there like, but I love it. I'm going to do it. I love it. And I'm like, oh, you're going to need a little more than that.
Yeah. And I think it's a range. I think that for a lot of people, that's exactly right. But I'm thinking of myself, when I graduated from the atelier, I could not see color.
Yeah, but you had grit. See what I'm saying?
Well, and so that's what that's passion, maybe.
No,
So
well, okay, fair enough. But I
held
would
me
think of
for 10
passion
years
as more
to
like I
study
love the
color.
thing.
Huh?
I would think of passion as more like I love the thing. Grit is a sign of hard work and dedication. I mean, maybe it's semantics. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people that love painting, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily hard workers. I don't know.
Right.
It's an interesting conversation, actually.
Well, and again, that's kind of what I talk about. There's a mix of skills that you need to have to be
Yeah.
successful. And that's a tough thing to kind of evaluate and know thyself, I've also we've had students that were just insanely talented. I had great hopes. I was all excited. This is who we wanted exactly. Who dropped out second, third year for who knows what reasons. It had nothing to do with their talent. I think since everything came easy and then we were pushing them, they didn't like that, or they couldn't take that, or who knows what it is. But some of my more successful graduates were not the stars starting out, but they sure worked hard.
Real.
So it's
Wait,
really
wait.
hard.
Let me make sure I understand. Some of the ones that are the most successful now weren't your best students. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, at least
Yeah.
especially in the beginning.
In the
You would have,
beginning.
they'd fall in that, you sure you should be doing this? Maybe. So I think that's the tricky part. It's just so hard to tell. You
It
just
is hard to
don't.
tell.
And so
And
you
I
only
would
get one
and I would want to never be the
chance.
one to tell a student to not do it.
Yeah.
Because you just can't know. As the teacher, I don't think I can know. I can have an idea, but I can't really confirm it for
I
sure.
agree with you. I think you're right. Yeah. So that's again with the book is kind of like, say you do go on that road and you do your best or whatever, and then you find out 5, 10, 15 years later, no, that just wasn't, maybe I shouldn't have done that, which I see a lot of artists lasting, a certain amount of time. Well, that's too bad, and that's a waste of time. And that was maybe a nice experience, but maybe it would have been better spent going into something else. Or, just again, I didn't think ahead at all. And I got
It's
lucky.
kind of the plot. I think that's why teenagers are programmed to be so completely clueless, because it
Yeah.
helps us as teenagers. Well, us, when we were teenagers,
Yeah.
it helped
Yeah.
us as teenagers to do the stupid things, take these stupid risks that were necessary to be successful.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's got to be something to that.
What do you want to, when you're sitting, 99 in your rocking chair looking back in your life, what do you want to say you did? Now, maybe that person that made it 15 years said, I didn't make it as an artist, but I did my best. I went for it. I don't ever have to now look back and say, I wonder if I could have made it. Yeah, it didn't work out, and I'm glad I did it. That's another thing that makes for a good life, maybe.
Oh,
So
I've got an
becoming a
uncle like that.
successful artist isn't the end all get all. To me, being
Yeah.
successful, I get to paint every day. I don't care about the house or the whatever. It's like that's
Yeah,
a
but you're
good
doing
life.
okay. It's not like you're living hand to mouth.
No, I've those
You just bought a
some
church
years
for
are better
crying
than
out
others,
loud.
but we still have, there's some years better than others, and there's some
Yeah.
years that are really well. It's a goofy business.
It is. It is. Yeah, it's interesting what you just said, because I have an uncle. Do you know Mark Pugh's work?
Yeah, I got to meet him at the
Oh, yeah,
convention.
yeah.
too.
So
That was
he's
fun.
my cousin, right? Did you know that?
Know that.
Yeah, he's my cousin. So my mom and his dad are siblings.
Okay.
And anyway, his dad is very talented. I don't have a lot of artists in my direct family, but my uncle, my grandmother, they were apparently, my grandmother, I never saw her work, but apparently she had some artistic ability. And my uncle, he had a lot of artistic ability, but he has watched. I remember when I started to come up as an artist, and my uncle, I could see it I didn't have to see it. He would express it. He's just like, why didn't I do it? Because he had apparently studied art when he was young in college. And then he decided it just wasn't practical. He's like, no one can make it as an artist. It just, the stuff we all hear.
Yeah.
And he went into engineering, and he was a very successful engineer. He's had a good life financially in many ways, but he often would lament that he's like, why didn't I do it? Because he's watching me do it, and he's realizing he could have done it. And now his son's doing it.
Yeah.
So, and then because he started lamenting to me long before his son was successful, and now his son is successful. And it's like, it's tough so yeah, there is that too. You don't want to wish you had tried.
That's a good story, and I've heard that story multiple times from different some people. In a way, I mean, not your specific one, but
Similar stories.
very
Yeah.
similar with our students' parents, or we've had people stop in just to kind of tour the school that are in their 50s or whatever, and had some of them have tears, just because why didn't I do this? Or for the
Oh,
same
that would hurt so
reason that
bad.
we're told no one can be an artist. You can't. It's not practical, or whatever else, and it's really sad,
It is. I
so
always
that's
tell
what-
my students, when they have talent, the ones that I see that have potential, I don't want to do this to every student, but the ones that I see that have real potential, if they're scared, I always say, look, just work your ass off. Just try, do the best you can do. And then worst case scenario, 5-10 years from now, if it really isn't working, go back to school.
Yeah.
Right. But you're young right now. Just take a shot at this. You might regret it if you don't.
Take it one day at a time. Just enjoy it, and just a bad day of pain is still a good day.
Mhm.
You're in a sacred position, but you're in a position that you should really appreciate, because there are so many people that would love to be in your position and can't for whatever reason. You are right now, so enjoy it. Don't take it so seriously. It's not brain surgery. If you make a mistake, no one dies. It's a piece of canvas.
Yeah.
Let's keep the perspective on this, and let's just see where this goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Well, if you ever do read that book, let me know what you think of it. It's interesting. I mean, a part of me does buy into it. I do think there's a little too much of this. I love ballet, and I'm 6'4", 300 pounds. Like it's never going to work for you, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are the extremes. I think maybe they're speaking in terms of the extremes. I don't know. I guess I can't get in the author's mind, but there are definitely those situations where it's like, maybe this isn't for you. But I think in many cases, it just comes down to grit, like you had when you were in school.
Yeah. Well, and again, going back to thinking of the kids that start out in grade school that were maybe they're all great little football players. It takes a certain amount of passion, if we want to use that word, or just desire. Maybe that's a better word, that you're going to go through the steps it takes to become the best. Now, if I thought for a while that I wanted to be, whatever, pro tennis player or whatever, and I might for a year or two be out on the court 10 hours a day. After a while, it's like, I don't love this. Why am I, the passion will die.
Oh, I
And
don't
I think
know. I disagree. So
oh, really?
yeah, because I don't love painting. Never have. I don't love drawing. Don't love painting.
You're doing it
And
for
that's because I'm good at it. So
Yeah,
that's why this book
sorry.
really spoke to me. That's why this book spoke to me. So it's always been something I've been naturally good at. I didn't have classes in high school. I didn't have classes as a kid, but I was always better than my peers. And I'm like, I guess I'll be an artist.
That's wise. I mean, there's nothing.
Like, what else am I going to do? I mean, I have lots of skills. I mean, I'm not to, now I sound really cocky here. I could have been an engineer. I could have been an architect. There's a lot of things I'm good at that I could have done.
Yeah.
But I really stood out as an artist, right?
Yeah.
So it just seemed like, well, yeah, I guess I'm an artist. It just felt like it was part of my DNA, even though I didn't necessarily enjoy it. So it just felt like who I was. So I just did it. And to this day, I don't enjoy painting. But my passion, like the book says, my passion lies in having succeeded in something. Like, you know what I mean? Like in being able to make something difficult. That's where the passion is. Because if I really dig deep, me personally, in my own soul here, there's really not too many things that I could do every day and enjoy. I don't think there's really anything that I could do every single day and enjoy. That's just my personality. So I had to pick something I was good at and just apply a lot of grit, a lot of hard work, and just become the best I can become at it. And then the passion is in that striving of trying to be great at something. It could have been anything. I could have been like a veterinarian, and I would have had the same passion to be a great veterinarian,
And I would imagine most artists in history, when you think about it, especially back in the Renaissance design, when they would be apprenticed at 10, 12, and their parents said, this is what you're going to do, probably just like, okay, I'm going to be an artist. It wasn't like, I have to be an artist. It's like, I'm going to be an artist. And they were probably your mindset and did insanely beautiful work, So it's just interesting how different personalities come at things. To hear the side of, or hear you talk about this.
Yeah, and my kids don't really like it either, but they're really gifted. My son said to me on the phone, because he's in Romania, he says to me recently, he's like, I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be a painter. And I'm like, okay. And he said, yeah, I was telling my companion, and when you're on a mission, you have what's called a companion. You have to be with someone all the time because you're all the way in Romania, and they're using the buddy system, right? So they call it a companion. So he's like, yeah, I was telling my companion I'm going to be an artist. And my companion says, are you passionate about painting? He goes, no, I don't really care about it that much. He's like, well, that's ridiculous. You're going to be, he's like, yeah, but I'm good at it. It's like, I'm naturally good at it. And he goes, but that's not, you got to be passionate about it. His companion's dying. He's like, I can't even believe this is happening right now. And Chase is like, no, I'm just good at it. I think I'll be successful at it. And I'm like listening to him thinking, man, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree,
That makes sense. So, I mean, and maybe it's just the words we're using between passion, this and that. I mean, for me, it's not like every
be a
day,
little semantics.
It's like, no, I'm just not going to quit, and I'm going to work through this, whatever I'm stuck at. But it is dedication, and you know what? You kind of live for those moments of passion. So let me ask you that: do you ever have where the flow, or where it just rarely happens, but it comes together?
Yeah, that does happen.
Yeah. So that.
Yeah. The reason I say I don't enjoy it is because let me see, if I don't want to say something I don't mean. I'd say 9 days out of 10, if I didn't have to make any money, didn't have to support a family, I wouldn't choose to paint 9 out of 10 days. Now, that being said, I would never want to give up painting because I love it enough that it's, there is something about it that I need in my life. But when I think of a passionate painter, I think of a painter that just lives to be at the easel. That's not me. For me, I'm more like a camel. Camels need water, but they need it in small doses, just occasionally. But if they can't just go thirsty forever or they'll die. That's how I am with painting. I don't need it every day, but if I go too long, I emotionally, physically, literally will get sick. I'm like, I need to paint sometimes, but I don't crave it daily like I imagine people like you do. Or am I wrong?
I think once I get into a good rhythm, like I just finished up a series of commissions that were ball breakers. They were all outdoor, big figurative pieces, multi-figure. And it was just was a lot. And I let a lot of things go that needed to be done around here, you know. And for the first week or two afterwards, like I felt wrong not to be at there painting, going at it and that. And now I'm I don't think I've painted much for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. And it's strange that I feel slightly comfortable for the first time with that. But
maybe that's why, because I'm doing these.
I know
really
that another week I'm going to be like getting twitchy, like I gotta paint. You know, so I can sort of relate, but yeah, I think that I would just feel like I don't know. I haven't thought about this stuff before, so it's interesting to be chatting about it.
Yeah, it's been fun with the podcast because a lot of I haven't had the same conversation with everybody, but I have met a few artists that have a similar sentiment toward painting. They're like, yeah, I could take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But
if I was exceedingly wealthy and could retire, then I could paint full time.
That's what you'd. That's the thing. That's the thing. I would never quit painting. That's the thing. I don't think I'd ever quit. So I don't know. I can't. I'm 50 years old and I still haven't figured out myself. Whatever that, you know. But to my original point, I do believe, because of my own personal experience, which I realize is just my anecdotal experience, it's like it doesn't define the world. I'm a believer that it's more important to have grit and work ethic than to have passion, because that's been my experience. You know, It's like, I don't have to love it. I just got to want to be successful.
That I agree with 100%. No, I understand that part of it. I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun, man. I could talk to you for hours about this kind of stuff. It's been good. So it's great to have you on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm glad we hooked up at the Portrait Society. I got to finally meet you, and looking forward to next year.
Oh yeah, you're teaching next year, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's great. And I'm not teaching for the first time in 12 years. So I'm going to just be there heckling you the whole time.
You'll just be giving us a hard time.
Yeah. What are you doing?
I guess the face off, and then we're going to some lecture talk with, they're still working it out. I think composition with, trying to think who the other artists were.
So they still haven't got it straight yet, huh?
They're still working it out. So they keep changing their ideas out. So I think Kevin McPherson and Ruth
Fenton.
I think we're gonna have a talk on compositions where they're narrowing it down, which is
great. I'm really excited. I mean, I love being on the faculty, absolutely love it. But I'm actually kind of looking forward to just wandering around this year and just being a fly on the wall, kind of.
A lot of people mention how much work you put into this thing and how dedicated you've been towards it, and everybody said it was a very respectful way and appreciative. So,
that's nice.
You've earned a year off, it sounds like.
What's that?
You've earned a year off.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I love doing it, so hopefully I get to do it again sometime. It'll be fun. Anyway, again, great seeing you, man.
Yeah, you too. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.